In the third year of her marriage to Liu Jia, the temperature plummeted to minus 60 degrees Celsius. He encountered a break in the ice while escorting a team of energy experts. He begged me to save his white moonlight first and not to worry about him. The detection screen showed that the area where he was located had the most stable structure, with a rescue success rate of up to 78%, while Xia Yao's location had already begun to collapse a second time. Sorry, I cut off the channel of his desperate pleas and yelled at the rescue team, "Save Liu Jia first." When we carried him out, the adjacent area had completely collapsed. Xia Yao is dead, and Liu Jia's leg is crippled. In the 8th year of extreme cold, I risked my life to find supplies to survive from the outside world and ran happily to the refuge, only to overhear his conversation with his confidant. Back then, she abandoned Xia Yao for her own affections, causing her to leave us too soon. Every day she lives reminds me of how much I hate her. He tricked me into going to the edge of a cliff, and then pushed me off the icy precipice with his own hands. When I opened my eyes again, I was back to the day when I was trembling as I held the communicator. This time, I quietly cut off the communication and turned to walk towards the equipment depot. "Since you're so eager to die with her, I will grant your wish." "Jianyu, can you hear me? Jianyu, choose Xia Yao. She can't hold on, she can't die, please, Liu." Jia's voice was hoarse, filled with gasps of intense pain, and every word revealed his undisguised anxiety and affection for another woman. Time seemed to freeze at that moment, then suddenly tug and swirl. It's not a hallucination, it wasn't a dream of near-death. I'm back. We've returned to this crossroads that will determine the fate of all of us. In my previous life, it was at the very moment this communicator came through that I heard him pleading to save Xia Yao first. The white moonlight he held dear in his heart at that time. The monitoring screen clearly showed that the structure of the area where he was located was relatively stable, with a rescue success rate of up to 78%. However, around Xia Yao's location, where the light representing signs of life was flashing a red alarm indicating danger, a secondary collapse was imminent. I love him so much that I've lost all judgment and principles. So, ignoring his last wish, amidst cries of "Captain, no," with bloodshot eyes, like a mother beast driven to the brink, I roared at the rescue team, "Save Liu Jia first. That's an order. I'll take full responsibility for the consequences." When we pulled him out of the gap between the ice and the rubble, he was covered in blood, and his left leg was twisted at a bizarre angle. Almost simultaneously, a loud bang came from the next area, and the light spot belonging to Xia Yao on the monitoring screen went out. Xia Yao is dead. Liu Jia's leg is lame. From that moment on, the way he looked at me became completely crippled. There was no longer even a trace of warmth left there, only bone-chilling coldness and hatred. Yes, hate. He hated me for killing his pure and innocent Xia Yao. In the following frigid years, even though I gave it my all, dragging my wounded body and soul, searching for supplies and medicine for him in hellish temperatures of minus 60 or 70 degrees Celsius, even though I shielded him from the knives of thugs and almost froze to death on the way to find energy, all I got in return was his growing disgust and indifference. In the 8th year of extreme cold, I finally found a small box of antibiotics that hadn't yet frozen and lost their effectiveness. I was so sure that I could relieve his pain from his old injuries that I ran to the shelter like a fool, but outside the medical room, he could clearly hear his conversation with his confidant. Back then, because of that ridiculous personal relationship, she insisted on saving me and abandoned Yao, causing Yao to die so young. His voice was low and gloomy. The confidant seemed to want to advise, "But Captain, the lady has been like this all these years." He interrupted me coldly, each word like a poisoned ice pick, shattering my last glimmer of hope. "So what? Every day she lives reminds me how much I hate her and how much I have wronged Yao." A few days later, he surprisingly softened his expression towards me and said he had found a hidden spot that might contain a large amount of old era supplies, and he wanted to take me there. I believed it then. Atop that precipice, he looked at me with a clarity and cruelty I had never seen before, and said, "Jianyu, you owe Yao a life, and it's time to pay it back." He personally pushed me off the icy cliff. The biting cold instantly engulfed me. The sound of bones shattering was clearly audible. In my last moments of consciousness, I saw him standing atop the cliff, his back resolute and icy. "Do you hate it?" "It's more than just hatred, it was a karmic fire that burned away the soul, a venomous hatred that wished to drag the whole world into hell. But now, this karmic fire is frozen inside his chest." burning calmly. I took a deep breath, the -60-degree air filling my lungs with a knife-like pain, yet it also made me incredibly clear-headed. Over the communicator, Lugia's pleas continued, filled with a heart-wrenching despair. Jian Yu, answer me, save her, you must save her first. I raised my hand, my fingertips unusually steady, and pressed the power-off button on the communicator. A soft beep sounded. The world is peaceful now. All the pleas, all the noise, all the nauseating hypocrisy vanished. The rescue team leader, a veteran member of the team and who was standing by, looked at me in astonishment. Vice Captain, the captain, I turned around, a faint, cold smile on my face, which looked somewhat eerie against the stark white emergency lights of the command center. Communications were disrupted due to strong interference. My voice was calm and emotionless. According to current monitoring data, the probability of a secondary collapse in Zone B is increasing rapidly, and the life signs are weak. Immediately adjust the rescue plan, prioritize the rescue of Zone B, and spare no effort to rescue Xiaoyao. The rescue team members were stunned, opened their mouths, as if to say something. Lugia is the captain, and his authority has been established for a long time. Moreover, his instructions in the communication just now were so clear. My gaze swept over them, icy and unyielding. Do I need to repeat my order, or do you want to see Xiaoyao die inside? I emphasized the three characters Xiaoyao a little. The rescue team members snapped to attention and stood up abruptly. Yes, sir, prioritize rescuing Area B. He immediately turned around and yelled into the communication channel. Team 1, Team 2, Target B, hurry. Move quickly. The entire rescue center instantly sprang into action. Like boiling water tossed with a boulder, but in a completely different direction than in the previous life, I stood there, looking at the green stable structure icon representing Lugia's area on the monitoring screen, and the constantly flashing and intensifying red alert next to it, representing Xiaoyao's area. Lugia, didn't you keep saying that she couldn't die? Didn't you say you'd rather risk your own safety than let her be harmed? Okay, I will grant your wish. I'll show you what exactly you're risking your life to protect. Let you experience what it's like to be constantly reminded of your disability by the person you love. This time, I chose to save her. I want you to live and bear all of this. The rescue operation was more difficult than expected. The collapse in Zone B was extremely severe. The rescue team paid a heavy price before finally managing to dig a life-saving passage. Several hours later, Xiaoyao was sent out first. She was wrapped in a thick thermal blanket. Her hair was disheveled, and her face was covered in dust and tear stains, making her look pitiful. As soon as she came out, she was sobbing weakly and was quickly taken to the medical room. Aside from being extremely frightened and suffering some minor abrasions, she was almost completely unharmed. Another long half-hour passed before Lugia was finally rescued. As expected, while we were doing our best to rescue Xiaoyao, the area where he was located experienced a second compression and collapse, which was far larger than in the previous life. When he was carried out, his lower body was almost buried under deformed metal supports and frozen rubble. He was unconscious, and his blood soaked through the legs of his Special Forces uniform, congealing into dark red ice. The medical officer's initial diagnosis was far more brutal than in the previous life. The spinal nerves were severely damaged, both legs had completely lost sensation, and the possibility of recovery was extremely slim. He was paralyzed. Lugia remained unconscious in the medical pod for 3 days. I have never visited him, using the excuse of the need to take charge of the overall situation and maintain order in the shelter. I buried myself in endless official duties and patrol missions. The team members looked at me with a complex mix of emotions, sympathy, confusion, and a sense of unquestionable understanding. After all, to everyone's ears, Captain Lugia's last words before the communication was cut off were, "To save Xiaoyao." As a wife, I endured immense grief and the heartbreak of being abandoned to comply with my husband's wishes. How wise and forbearing I was. Some even felt indignant on my behalf. They felt that Lugia had gone too far, hurting his wife like this for the sake of a teammate. See, people's hearts are so easily manipulated. On the evening of the 3rd day, I figured he should be waking up soon, so I took a document and slowly walked towards the medical area. As soon as I reached the door of the ward, I heard Xiaoyao's voice, which was trembling with sobs, coming from inside. "Brother Jia, you're finally awake. You scared me to death. You've been unconscious for 3 days. It was so scary back then. The ice just collapsed all at once." I thought I was going to die a sob. Later I found out that it was Sister Jianyu who ordered me to be saved first. Did she misunderstand something? I know that you told me to go first because you didn't want to implicate me. You are the captain and have a responsibility to protect every team member, but Sister Jianyu, will she be angry with me? I stood outside the door, coldly watching inside through the observation window. Lu Jie lay on the hospital bed, his face pale, lips cracked, and eyes still somewhat unfocused, but upon hearing Xia Yao's words, his brows furrowed instinctively. He looked at the woman beside him, who was on the verge of tears, and said in a weak but reassuring voice, "It's not your fault, it was my order." Jianyu, he seemed to want to ask about my situation, but didn't know how to bring it up. Xia Yao immediately seized the opportunity, looking at him with eyes full of admiration and dependence, and choked out, "Brother Jia, thank you, you saved my life. If you hadn't insisted that Sister Jianyu save me first, I might already be. The doctor said your leg is sob. It's all because of me. Don't worry, I'll take care of you from now on. I definitely will." As she spoke, she reached out to shake Lu Jie's hand. I pushed the door open and entered. A creak broke the seemingly touching atmosphere in the ward. Both of them looked towards the doorway at the same time. Lu Jie's eyes instantly became extremely complicated. When he saw my calm and expressionless face, his anger and doubt quickly settled down. Xia Yao, like a startled rabbit, abruptly withdrew her hand, stood up, and looked at me timidly, her eyes even redder, as if I were some kind of bully who oppressed her. "Sister Jian, you're here," she greeted him softly, subtly moving closer to Lu Jie's bedside, adopting a posture of dependence and protection. I ignored her and walked straight to the bedside, my gaze falling on Lu Jie's legs, which were in heavy casts and fixed by mechanical braces. Woke up, Lu Jie stared intently at me, his Adam's apple bobbing, his voice terribly hoarse. "Why, save her first?" he did ask, with an accusatory tone. I raised an eyebrow slightly, looking at him with amusement. "Why, Captain Lu, before the communication was cut off, you were desperately pleading with me. Choose Xia Yao, she can't die, please. Do you need me to help you recall those words?" Lu Jie choked, his face turning even more ashen. Back then, the situation was critical at the time. Monitoring data showed that Xia Yao's area was about to collapse a second time, and the success rate was much lower than that of your area. I interrupted him, speaking in a business-like tone, as if giving a mission briefing. As the highest-ranking commander on site, based on my comprehensive assessment, I prioritize rescuing Xia Yao, whose chances of survival are lower and who was specifically entrusted to us by you, Captain. Any questions? I paused, my gaze sweeping over Xia Yao, who was biting her lip and remaining silent, before returning to Lu Jie's face. "Or perhaps, Captain Lu, those words you spoke back then were just hypocritical politeness spoken in the heat of the moment. Deep down, you actually hoped that I would defy your last wish and go to save you." Lu Jie's chest heaved violently from my words, and an unnatural flush rose on his pale face, clearly indicating that he was very angry. He probably never imagined that I would speak to him in this tone and with this attitude. Seeing this, Xia Yao immediately stepped forward and said softly, "Sister Jianyu, don't be angry, Brother Jia didn't mean it that way, he just woke up and might still be a little confused. He just didn't expect to be so badly injured." As she spoke, tears streamed down her face again. Looking at Lu Jie's legs, her face was filled with heartache and self-blame. "It's all my fault. If it weren't for me, of course it's your fault." I coldly picked up where she left off. Xia Yao's crying stopped abruptly, and she looked at me in astonishment. Lu Jie also looked up in shock. I looked at her and spoke each word clearly. "If you hadn't deviated from the planned exploration route and gone to the more unstable Area B, it wouldn't have triggered a chain reaction that caused the ice layer to break off on such a large scale. Captain Lu was in danger because he was looking for you, with limited rescue resources. Because of you, multiple rescue efforts that could have been launched earlier were wasted, indirectly causing Captain Lu to miss the best rescue time and his injuries to worsen." With each word I spoke, Xia Yao's face paled a little more. "These are preliminary conclusions drawn from the post-incident investigation. I am simply tearing away that fig leaf without any mercy at this moment. So, I concluded, my gaze sharp as ice, team member Xia Yao, you really should take good care of Captain Lu. After all, his later life was ruined because of you. You must remember this gratitude and repay it properly for the rest of your life." Xia Yao's face instantly drained of color, her lips trembled, and she looked at me as if I were a monster. She probably thought I would swallow my anger, or at least maintain a facade of peace, but she never expected me to tear off the mask and lay bare all the responsibility and shame. Liu Jie looked at me as if he were seeing me for the first time, his eyes filled with disbelief. I had no interest in watching their shock and embarrassment, so I placed the document I had been holding onto Liu Jie's bedside table. Also, this is for you. Liu Jie's gaze unconsciously fell on the document. At the very top are 4 bold characters, divorce agreement. His pupils suddenly contracted, as if burned by those 4 words. He suddenly looked up at me, his eyes filled with utter shock, panic, and a furious anger at being completely offended. Jian you. He tried to say something, but his emotions became so intense that he started coughing violently. Xia Yao also saw the agreement. A flash of disbelief crossed her eyes, followed by barely suppressed elation, but she quickly concealed it, putting on an anxious and worried expression. She gently patted Liu Jie's back. Brother Jie, don't get excited. The doctor said you can't get excited. Looking at Liu Jie's face, red from coughing, and his fixed gaze on me as if I had committed some heinous crime, I felt only a desolate, frozen landscape and a cold, triumphant laugh. I've already signed it, I stated calmly, as if I were saying that the weather was nice today. Once you feel a little better and are able to sign, have your assistant deliver it to me. After saying that, I stopped looking at his murderous gaze and Xia Yao's feigned concern, turned around, and left the ward without looking back. As expected, rumors began to spread quietly in every corner of the shelter overnight. Have you heard? Deputy Captain Jian is getting a divorce from Captain Liu. Really? Captain Liu was injured like that while saving Xia Yao. Well, we can't really blame Deputy Captain Jian, can we? Captain Liu was shouting in the communications that we should save Teacher Xia first. That's true, but couples are like birds in the same forest. When disaster strikes, Captain Liu is now paralyzed, and Deputy Captain Jian is trying to distance herself from him. That's just too much. Yes, and I heard that it was Deputy Captain Jian who personally gave the order to save Teacher Xia first, which caused Captain Liu to miss the best time for rescue. Really, that's too much. Could it be because Captain Liu cares more about Teacher Xia, so Vice Captain Jian, out of love, turned to hate? Deliberately? Shoo, keep your voice down. Deputy Captain Jian is coming. The whispers stopped abruptly the moment I stepped into the public canteen. Countless gazes were cast upon me, some with sympathy, others with curiosity, some with disdain, and some with schadenfreude, like fine needles pricking my already numb nerves. I expressionlessly prepared a bland, synthetic food and found a corner to sit down. Sister Jianyu, a soft, timid voice sounded beside me. Xia Yao stood by the table with a tray in her hand, her eyes slightly red, hesitant to speak, looking like she had suffered a lot of grievances but was trying to be strong. Several teammates who usually liked to hang around her were also following behind her. What's up? I asked without looking up. Sister Jianyu, I know you're angry with me, blaming me for dragging Brother Jie into this. Her voice was choked with sobs, loud enough for everyone around to hear, but please don't blame Chino. And please don't leave him, okay? He really needs you right now. As she spoke, tears slid down her cheeks at just the right moment, dripping onto her plate with a soft tap, a brilliant move of retreating to advance. The aroma of tea fills the air. I put down my spoon and looked up at her. His gaze was calm, yet it made Xia Yao instinctively shrink back. Teacher Xia, I said, my voice not loud, but clearly carried throughout most of the suddenly quiet cafeteria. First, whether I am divorced or not is my private matter, and it is none of your business to worry about. Second, I interrupted her attempt to defend herself, my tone flat yet undeniably firm. Liu Jie violated operating procedures by entering a dangerous area to save you, which resulted in his serious injury. The accident report clearly states this. Your so-called implicated is far too simplistic. Xia Yao's face turned pale instantly. A series of suppressed gasps rose from the surrounding area. Accident report. Many people are still unaware of the specific details, I continued, my gaze sweeping over the team members behind her, whose eyes were darting around, before finally settling on Xia Yao's forced composure. Third, and most importantly, is the rumor that I divorced him because he was paralyzed. I leaned slightly closer to her and spoke in a voice that only the two of us could hear, yet which carried a cold, penetrating quality. Xia Yao, listen up. I, Jianyu, find it disgusting, Man who, in a life-or-death situation, unhesitatingly abandoned his wife and chose another woman, a disabled man who needs to rely on moral blackmail and sob stories to maintain a relationship. He doesn't even deserve it. It was as if an invisible wave of ice had exploded in the cafeteria. Everyone was stunned and stared at me in disbelief. Even Xia Yao froze on the spot, her face drained of color, her lips trembling, unable to utter a single word. She probably thought I would argue, get angry, or become hysterical. But she never expected me to be so direct and ruthless in tearing all pretenses to shreds, even trampling on Lu Jia's last shred of dignity as a man. I stood up, looking down at her swaying figure, and delivered the final blow. Didn't you keep saying you wanted to repay his kindness and take care of him? I've given you your chance, so seize it. Stop just crying and playing the victim everywhere. Show some real action. After all, I smirked with a cold sarcasm, taking care of a bedridden, irritable patient is not something that can be done well just by talking. I hope your gratitude can last a little longer. After saying that, I stopped looking at her expression, which seemed to indicate that the sky had fallen, picked up my plate, and left. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the shelter became subtle. The discussions about me haven't completely subsided, but the tide has turned. When I wore my crisp Special Forces uniform, handled various tasks efficiently, led my team to clear ice and reinforce structures, and even personally led a team to search for a batch of precious cold-resistant parts, the whispers behind my back were gradually replaced by a sense of awe and trust. In the 8th year of the apocalypse, strength is the only true measure of power. A vice captain who can lead everyone to survive is far more reliable than a benefactor who only knows how to cry and whine, or a former captain who lies in a hospital bed needing to be taken care of. My application for an independent living unit was approved as quickly as possible. When I moved out of the room where I had lived with Lu Jia for 3 years, I didn't hesitate at all. The so-called warm memories left there have long been blown away by the cold wind under the ice cliff in the previous life, leaving only nauseating hypocrisy. I didn't have much stuff. I quickly packed up my core equipment and personal belongings. I took one last look at this place that had witnessed countless moments of folly and despair, then turned away decisively and locked the door. I casually tossed the key into the recycling chute in the hallway. Goodbye. No, goodbye forever. My new home is at the other end of the shelter, closer to the command center, and quieter. This signifies the consolidation of my position, and also means that I have completely distanced myself from the residential area where Lu Jia and Xia Yao live, but that doesn't stop me from knowing their news. Xia Yao kept her promise and began to take meticulous care of Lu Jia. Unfortunately, this vase who has never lifted a finger in the kitchen has no idea how to take care of a patient who is paralyzed from the waist down and whose emotions are extremely unstable. In just a few days, all sorts of strange things started to happen. Vice Captain, the medical department reports that Captain Lu's bedsores are quite severe, and it seems that team member Xia doesn't know how to handle them. Deputy Captain, the Logistics Department reports that the nutritional liquid food allocated to Captain Lu is being consumed at an unusually fast rate, but Captain Lu's physical condition has not improved. In fact, he has become somewhat thinner. Deputy Captain Jian, Xia Yao was crying at the nursing station again today, saying that Captain Lu lost his temper and threw things, and she could barely hold on. Listening to my team members' reports, which seemed to be a report but actually carried a hint of schadenfreude, I didn't even raise an eyebrow. According to regulations, they should receive all the necessary supplies and medical support they are entitled to. I flipped through the patrol report in my hand, my tone indifferent. As for how they get along, that's their private matter. We have no right to interfere, nor do we need to pay too much attention to it. The team members immediately fell silent and respectfully withdrew. I know that these words will soon be distorted and reach Lu Jia's ears. What will he think? Do you think I'm cold and heartless? Or are you starting to question Xia Yao's ability to take care? I don't care. All I need to do is make sure they're firmly bound together and mutually drain each other, and that's enough. That day, I went to the energy storage depot to check on the storage of the batch of cold-resistant parts that had just been delivered. The only way through is to pass through the outer corridor of the central rehabilitation area. From afar, Xia Yao's voice, trembling with sobs and raised 8 octaves, could be heard. Brother Jia, don't do this. You can't skip your medicine. The doctor said it's very important for your recovery. Get out, all of you, get out. I don't need your fake kindness. Lu Jia's hoarse and furious roar followed closely behind. accompanied by the ear-piercing sound of porcelain shattering. The glass door to the rehabilitation area wasn't closed properly, so the inside was completely exposed. Lugia sat in a wheelchair, looking emaciated with sunken eyes. His once sharp, hawk-like eyes were now bloodshot, replaced by mania and despair. He was wearing a hospital gown that looked rather loose, and a blanket was covering his legs. Xiao stood in front of him, with a broken bowl and spilled dark brown medicine on the ground. Her hair was a little messy, her eyes were red, and she looked like she had suffered a lot of grievances. There were several nurses around who wanted to go forward but did not dare to. Brother Jia, I know you're suffering, but you can't take it out on yourself, Xiao cried out. I take care of you from dawn till dusk every day. My hands are all worn out. Why can't you be more considerate of me? Considerate of you? Lugia looked up sharply, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. He stared at her fiercely. If you hadn't been so stupid, acting on your own, would I be in this state now? Huh? What can you do besides cry? You can't even feed your medicine properly. Useless. Xiao trembled at his shout. Her face turned deathly pale, and tears streamed down her face as if she were about to faint at any moment. How could you say that to me? I did it all for you, for me, to show how kind and selfless you are. Lugia gave a sarcastic sneer, his words like knives. Stop with your act, it disgusts me. Silence fell over the surroundings. The nurses all lowered their heads, unable to bear to look any longer. I stood in the shadows of the corridor, quietly watching this farce unfold. Look, they were once so deeply in love and so selfless, but now they are like two wild beasts trapped in a cage, tearing each other apart and exhausting their last bit of dignity. This is the love that Lugia risked his life for. What a magnificent show. Seemingly sensing the gaze from outside the corridor, Lugia suddenly turned his head, his gaze pierced through the glass, precisely capturing me in the shadows. At that moment, the rage and sarcasm on his face froze, turning into utter astonishment, followed by overwhelming embarrassment and shame, and a hint of deep-seated humiliation and pleading that even he himself was unaware of. He saw the calm in my eyes, a complete and utter indifference, a detached detachment. It felt like watching two complete strangers putting on a poorly executed play. There was no anger, no jealousy, not even a ripple. This disregard was more unbearable for him than any vicious curse. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but in the end, he just gripped the armrests of the wheelchair tightly, his knuckles turning white, and he lowered his head dejectedly, avoiding my gaze. Xiaya followed his gaze and saw me. Her crying stopped abruptly, a flash of panic and resentment crossing her face. Then, as if she had found an outlet, she cried out to me, her voice still trembling with sobs, Sister Jinyu, you've come just in time. Please, please talk to Brother Jia. He can't go on like this. I slowly stepped out of the shadows and stood outside the glass door, my gaze calmly sweeping over the mess on the ground before finally settling on Xiao's face. Thank you, team member. My voice was soft but clear to everyone. Caring for patients requires patience and professionalism, not a loud voice and tears. If you feel you can't handle it, you can apply to change caregivers. The shelter's regulations do not mandate that benefactors must do everything themselves. Xiao's face flushed red and then turned pale. I paused, then turned my gaze to Lugia, who was looking down, radiating an aura of despair. My tone was indifferent, as if stating a fact that had nothing to do with me. As for Captain Lu, it's your own body. Whether you actively cooperate with treatment or give up on yourself is the choice. After all, I slightly curled the corners of my lips, but there was no warmth in that smile. Only you can be responsible for your life. No one else is obligated to pay the price for your choices. After saying that, I ignored their instantly ugly expressions, turned around, and walked away with steady steps. After leaving that farce in the rehabilitation area, I focused more on my responsibilities, leading the team out to search for supplies, reinforce the shelter's defenses, and optimize energy allocation plans. I strive for perfection in every task. Demonstrating strength is the best way to establish a voice. Today in the shelter, when people mention Deputy Captain Jane, they feel respect and reliance. When Lu Jie and Xie Yao are mentioned, there is more of a tacit silence or a faint sigh. The two of them have become synonymous with trouble that are inextricably linked. Xie Yao's meticulous care was indeed full of loopholes. Lu Jie's bedsores not only did not improve, but also showed signs of infection due to improper cleaning and frequent friction. With recurring low-grade fever, he already needed special care due to intestinal dysfunction caused by paralysis, but Xiao couldn't even do basic abdominal massage and dietary adjustments properly, often making a mess of things. This added another layer of humiliation to Lu Jia's physical pain, making him feel utterly humiliated. He became increasingly silent, mostly remaining stagnant except for occasional outbursts of uncontrollable rage. Those once sharp eyes often stared blankly at the ceiling, or looked out the window at the perpetually gray sky. I can imagine the torment he was going through, the excruciating physical pain, loss of function, despair for the future, and facing a benefactor who only cries and complains, yet can't even provide basic care, day after day. The warmth that once arose from guilt and dependence has probably been worn away by the trivialities and unbearable realities of life. Xiao was clearly also nearing her limit. Taking care of a paralyzed patient is far more complicated than she imagined, where all it takes is a gentle demeanor and a few nice words. This job is tedious, dirty, physically demanding, and involves dealing with patients' unpredictable tempers. Her once meticulously cared for hands are now quite rough, and the weariness and resentment in her eyes cannot be hidden even with the thickest filter. She started going to the medical department frequently, not to inquire about her condition, but to complain. "Head nurse, I really can't hold on much longer, Brother Jia. He sometimes says such hurtful things. Doctor, could you prescribe more sedatives? He's in so much pain at night that he can't sleep and gets irritable, so I can't get any rest either." She tried to portray herself as a tragic figure who endured humiliation and hardship, but unfortunately, the audience was no longer the same people who would be easily moved by her tears. Everyone just offered a few perfunctory words of comfort and then went back to doing what they were doing. The turning point came late one night. The shelter's alarm suddenly sounded shrilly, signaling a level 2 alert. All combat personnel immediately moved to their designated positions. I quickly put on my gear, grabbed my weapon, and rushed to the command center. The corridor was filled with hurried footsteps and commands, creating a tense atmosphere. As I passed through the passageway near the medical area, I caught a glimpse of a familiar figure out of the corner of my eye, sneaking into the storage room. It's Xiao. Why is she not staying in Lu Jia's ward at this time, but instead running to the storage room? Moreover, she seemed to be holding a small package in her hands. A doubt crossed my mind, but the situation was urgent and I didn't have time to think about it. I immediately put this little incident behind me and focused all my energy on directing the defense. The invaders were small in number but well equipped, resembling roving raiders. The firefight lasted for more than half an hour. Thanks to our advantageous terrain and thorough preparation, we successfully repelled them and captured 2 of them. After handling the aftermath and arranging the guard shifts, it was already dawn. I dragged my slightly tired body back to the residential area, but was stopped by the head nurse on duty when I passed the medical area. "Deputy Captain," the head nurse said in a low voice, her expression grave, "there's something I think I should report to you. You say, when the alarm went off last night, Xiao was not in Captain Lu's ward. When we checked on him later, we found that Captain Lu had fallen off the bed while trying to get water and had been lying on the floor for almost an hour until Xiao returned after the alarm was lifted," the head nurse said with dissatisfaction. "Moreover, we found this later when we were cleaning the storage room." She handed me a small, empty metal can. There was no label on it, but inside there was a little bit of pale yellow, oily substance, emitting a faint, strange fragrance that didn't belong to the shelter rations. "It's a luxury item, a high-end skincare cream from the old days. These days, this is an extremely rare and expensive item." I immediately remembered the figure and the small package I had glimpsed last night. "Has it been tested?" I asked. "Initial tests show it's just a skin cream, and it's not toxic, but..." The head nurse paused. "According to regulations, all non-essential supplies acquired privately, especially imported items, must be reported." Xiao never reported any. Moreover, at this time, she abandoned her post to fiddle with this. I see. While everyone was fighting desperately to resist foreign enemies and protect their homes, our Captain Lu risked his life to save his white moonlight, but in order to hide and enjoy some shady luxury goods, he left the paralyzed, bedridden, and unable to take care of himself alone in the ward, causing him to fall off the bed and be ignored for an hour. If a more serious accident had occurred at that time, if the intruders had breached the defenses, I took the empty can, the cool metallic touch spreading along my fingertips, Who else knows about this? It was just me and the 2 nurses on duty that night. We have already told them to keep it a secret for now. Well done, I nodded. I'll handle this. I did not immediately confront Xiao. Instead, they went to Lu Jia's ward first. He lay on the hospital bed, his face even more ashen than before, his lips cracked, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. There was a noticeable bruise on his forehead, from falling off the bed last night. Hearing the door open, his eyes flickered, and when he saw it was me, he quickly looked away, with an indescribable embarrassment and self-loathing. I heard you fell last night. I walked to the bedside, my tone calm, and even he stiffened, pursed his lips, and refused to speak. Where was Xiao when the alarm went off? I asked again. He turned his head abruptly, his eyes swirling with complex emotions, anger, embarrassment, and a barely perceptible hint of panic. He clearly knew something, or rather, guessed something. She's just gone for a short while. His voice was dry and hoarse as he tried to explain, but he couldn't even convince himself. Looking at him like this, I felt no emotion whatsoever, only a kind of cruel clarity. I gently placed the empty skin cream jar on his bedside table, making a soft click sound. Lu Jia's gaze was instantly drawn to the small jar. He recognizes this thing. It's a classic model from a luxury brand from the old days. Xiao used to love this brand the most and had mentioned it to him countless times. Her words filled with longing. He even promised that when he returned from this mission, he would find a way to get her a jar. Now, this empty can, like a silent slap, struck him hard across the face. When he was paralyzed and bedridden after saving her, struggling in pain and even having difficulty drinking water, when the shelter was attacked and everyone was on high alert, the woman he risked his life to save secretly kept the gift he had promised her, and at the most critical moment, abandoned him for this thing. This was found in the storeroom. I spoke calmly, shattering his last shred of hope. When the alarm went off, someone saw Xiao go there. Lu Jia's pupils suddenly contracted, his breathing became heavy, and his chest heaved violently. He stared intently at the empty can, as if he wanted to burn it through. The veins on his forehead bulged, and his face drained of color, leaving only a deathly pallor and fury that came from being utterly betrayed. He opened his mouth, as if to say something, but no sound came out, only those bloodshot eyes, frighteningly red, churned with a monstrous turmoil. It was anger, disbelief, heart-wrenching disappointment, and even more so, a deep self-mockery and despair at having been so blind. Seeing him on the verge of collapse, I knew the seed had been planted. The cruelty of the truth is far more destructive to the beliefs he relied on than any accusations from outsiders. I didn't say anything more and turned to leave the ward. In the following days, the medical area seemed to become a silent battlefield. With an alarmingly low air pressure, Lu Jia fell completely silent. It was no longer the lifeless, decadent atmosphere of before, but a chilling silence brewing a storm. He refused to let Xiao touch him again, and even the water and medicine she brought him would be driven away by his extremely cold gaze. Xiao was clearly panicked. She tried to explain, her voice trembling with tears, repeating her feeble words over and over. Brother Jia, please listen to me. That face cream was from a long time ago. I've completely forgotten about it. I was so scared that night that I hid in the storage room. I didn't mean to leave you behind. Lu Jia's reaction was to either close his eyes or turn his head away, treating her as if she were invisible. This utter indifference was more unbearable for Xiao than yelling and scolding. She began to grow agitated, and a hint of resentment would often flash in her eyes, especially when she saw me calmly moving about the shelter and gaining increasing prestige. I knew she was about to break down, and a cornered person often does something even more foolish. That afternoon, I was taking inventory of a new batch of repaired weapons in the armory when Xiao came looking for me. She deliberately chose a time when there were other team members around. Sister Jianyu, she said, her voice not loud, but loud enough for those nearby to hear, her face showing a feigned sense of grievance. Can we talk? I put down my energy rifle, signaling the team members next to me to continue working, before looking at her. Is something wrong? She took a deep breath, as if gathering her courage. Sister Jianyu, I know you hate me, that you blame me for taking Jia away from you, but things have already come to this. Could you please be merciful and stop trying to drive a wedge between Jia and me? He's sick right now, and his emotions are unstable. I really just want to take good care of him. What a clever trick to distort the truth and shift the blame. Although the team members around them didn't stop what they were doing, their ears were practically as sharp as radar. I almost applauded her terrible acting. Provoke. I raised an eyebrow slightly, my tone laced with undisguised sarcasm. Xia Yao, are you referring to your dereliction of duty that caused him to fall off the bed, or are you referring to your possession of prohibited luxury goods? Xia Yao's face instantly drained of color, her eyes darting around in panic. You're lying. What luxury goods? You're framing me, whether it's a frame-up or not. You know in your heart. I took a step forward, getting closer to her, my gaze sharp as a knife, my voice as cold as ice. Do you need me to bring that empty can and the on-duty nurse's testimony to the whole team so that everyone can judge for themselves, when the shelter was attacked and all the combat personnel were fighting desperately to defend it? You, Captain Lu Jia, risked your life to save your benefactor, yet you left him alone in the hospital room to die for some shady matter. Xia Yao, your gratitude is truly unique. My voice echoed clearly in the equipment room, each word like a heavy hammer, striking Xia Yao's crumbling disguise and the hearts of every team member present. Suppressed gasps and disdainful glances came from all around. Xia Yao completely panicked and screamed incoherently, "No, it's you, it's all because of you. If you hadn't insisted on saving me first, how could Brother Jia be paralyzed? You killed him, and now you want to kill me too, you vicious woman, you'll die a horrible death." She acted like a madwoman, pointing at me with tears and snot streaming down her face. There was no trace of her usual gentle and delicate appearance. Seeing her completely broken down, I actually laughed. It was a cold laugh, tinged with endless irony. I killed him. I repeated her words, walking towards her, step by step, forcing her to instinctively back away. Xia Yao, do you need me to help you recall who was shouting hoarsely in the communicator back then? Save Xia Yao first. She can't die. Did I hold a knife to his neck and force him to tell me? Did I tell him to break the rules and go save you? Or was it me who turned him into a cripple who can only lie in a hospital bed and can't even take care of his own bodily functions? With my last words, I almost shouted, my gaze fixed intently on her pale face. Xia Yao was rendered speechless by my question, trembling all over, only able to repeat meaninglessly, "No, it's not like that." Enough. A hoarse but furious growl came from the armory entrance. Everyone looked in the direction of the sound. Lu Jia appeared at the door, wheeling himself in his wheelchair. His face was ashen, his chest heaving violently, and his bloodshot eyes, like those of a trapped beast on the verge of death, stared intently at the disheveled Xia Yao. He had clearly heard the entire conversation. "Brother Jia," Xia Yao cried and wanted to rush over as if she had seen a savior. "Shut up," Lu Jia abruptly interrupted her, his voice trembling with extreme anger and disappointment. "Xia Yao, I never imagined you would be this kind of person." "No, Brother Jia, please let me explain. Jinyu framed me." "Framed you?" Lu Jia seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. He pointed at Xia Yao, his finger trembling. "That skin cream, the brand I promised you back then, right? Huh, even now you're still thinking about this. I became like this for you, and you." He was so angry that he couldn't continue speaking, and he coughed violently, an unnatural flush rising on his pale face, overwhelmed by immense anger and a sense of betrayal, along with long-suppressed pain. He was utterly devastated at that moment. His vision went black, and he fainted, his body slumping limply in his wheelchair. "Brother Ji!" Xia Yao screamed and rushed over. "Captain!" The surrounding team members panicked as well. The scene was chaotic. I simply watched all of this calmly, watching Xia Yao futilely shake the unconscious Lu Jia, and watching the team members frantically push Lu Jia to the medical room. After Lu Jia was rescued again, he changed completely. He was no longer irritable, nor silent, but rather possessed a deathly stillness. But in those deep-set eyes, a chilling, almost obsessive, dark light would often flash. He began to cooperate with the treatment and even took the initiative to request some rehabilitation training that was nothing short of torture for him. The nurses privately said that Captain Lu seemed like a completely different person, and his gaze was unsettling. After experiencing public death in the equipment depot, Xia Yao seemed to have given up all hope. She no longer deliberately maintained that weak and pitiful appearance, and became perfunctory and mechanical in taking care of Lu Jia, even with a hint of impatience. Sometimes, when Lu Jia groaned in pain during training, she would coldly say, "Just bear with it, now you know how painful it is. Why didn't you think about the consequences when you were trying to be a hero?" Lu Jia would close his eyes, clench his teeth, and throb with veins on his forehead, but he would remain silent. "I know he's holding back." He endured the excruciating physical pain, Xia Yao's harsh words, and even more so, the overwhelming regret and the self-mockery of his own blindness. That day, I led a team out on a search mission and made an unexpected discovery in an abandoned old-fashioned underground warehouse. A batch of relatively well-preserved antibiotics and analgesics, as well as several boxes of extremely valuable nerve repair drugs. These are crucial strategic resources for the entire shelter. On the way back, we were ambushed by a small group of ice raiders. In a fierce battle, we wiped out the enemy at the cost of 2 minor injuries, but in order to protect a new team member, my arm was grazed by an energy blade, leaving a shallow but rather gruesome wound back at the shelter. As the medical officer treated my wounds, Lu Jie was being wheeled in by Xia Yao for a routine checkup. He saw the bandage on my arm, his eyes narrowed suddenly, and his lips moved as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he just gripped the wheelchair armrests tightly, looked away, and the lines of his neck were taut. Xia Yao, however, seemed to have caught something red-handed and said sarcastically, "Oh, Deputy Captain Jian, you're really something, leading your team out to play the hero again. Which pretty boy did you save this time, and end up like this?" I didn't even bother to lift my eyelids and said to the medical officer, "Is the medication ready? Give priority to the team members who were seriously injured and infected earlier with that batch of newly found antibiotics." "Yes, Vice Captain," the medical officer replied respectfully. When Xia Yao heard about antibiotics and nerve repair drugs, her eyes lit up, but her face darkened when she heard that they would be given priority to others. As she pushed Lu Jie away, I clearly heard her hushed, yet loud enough, complaint, "She found something good but didn't even give it to you first. I think she did it on purpose. She's deliberately trying to make things difficult for you." Lu Jie did not respond, but I saw his hands on his knees, his knuckles white from the force he was exerting. I thought Xia Yao was just complaining, but I never imagined that her greed and stupidity were far beyond my imagination. Late the next night, I was processing documents when my communicator suddenly rang urgently. It was a message from the guard at the medicine warehouse. "Deputy Captain, someone broke into the medicine warehouse and tried to steal the newly arrived nerve repair drugs. We caught them red-handed." "Who is it?" I already had a guess in my mind. "It's team member Xia Yao." I rushed to the medicine warehouse immediately. Xia Yao was being escorted by 2 guards, her hair disheveled, her face still showing the panic and resentment she had felt when she was arrested. She was clutching 2 boxes of nerve repair medication that she had just brought back yesterday. Upon seeing me, she shrieked like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "Jian Yu, what right do you have to arrest me? These medicines are exactly what Jiagij needs. You're hoarding supplies and deliberately preventing him from using them. You're trying to kill him." I looked at her coldly. Medication allocation is handled by the medical officer based on the urgency of the patient's condition and the principle of maximizing resources. When did it become your place to steal? "Steal? I'm just using it. Chino Nii is the captain. What's wrong with him using some medicine?" Xia Yao struggled, blurting out, "You're just jealous that Jiagij has feelings for me. That's why you're always targeting us. You wish he could never stand up again." I almost laughed out of exasperation at her logic. "Xia Yao, do you still think it's because I'm jealous of you?" I approached her, my gaze like an icicle piercing her ridiculous delusion. "You stole life-saving supplies from the shelter, caught red-handed. Do you know the consequences according to wartime regulations?" Xia Yao's expression finally changed. "Stealing vital supplies during wartime will at least result in being expelled from the shelter. Outside is a frigid hell of -60°C. Being expelled is tantamount to a death sentence. No, you can't do this to me." She retreated in terror, then looked sharply towards the warehouse door as if she had seen a savior. Brother Jia, please save me. Jianyu is going to kill me." I turned around. Lu Jia arrived at the warehouse entrance by himself in his wheelchair at some point. His face was pale, and as he looked at the scene before him, his eyes were filled with utter exhaustion and a kind of numb disappointment. "Brother Jia, tell her quickly that this medicine is for you. I didn't steal it." Xia Yao cried out as if she had grasped at the last straw. All eyes were on Lu Jia. He was silent for a few seconds, and those few seconds felt like an eternity. Then, he raised his eyes and looked at Xia Yao, his voice hoarse but unusually clear. "I didn't ask you to steal the medicine." Xia Yao was struck dumb. Standing there stunned, Lu Jia stopped looking at her and turned his gaze to me. With a complex and indescribable emotion, he spoke with difficulty. "Jian Yu, handle it according to the rules." After saying that, as if he had used up all his strength. He slowly turned and left, rocking his wheelchair. His back view was desolate, as if he had aged 10 years in an instant. "Lugia, you bastard, you son of a bitch, I stole the medicine for you, how could you do this to me, you're not human." Xiao completely broke down, cursing hysterically with foul language. I watched her throw a tantrum indifferently and ordered the guards, lock her in solitary confinement and await further instructions. After finishing up, I walked out of the warehouse and found that Lugia hadn't gone far. He stopped in the shadows of the corridor, his wheelchair sitting there all alone. He looked up when he heard my footsteps. In the dim light of the corridor, his face was deathly pale, and his eyes were bloodshot, churning with so much regret, pain, self-blame, embarrassment, and a kind of almost humble plea that I had never seen in his eyes before. He opened his mouth, his voice terribly dry, with a barely perceptible tremor. "Jianyu, I'm sorry." These 3 words seemed to have exhausted all his dignity and strength. I stopped and stood a few steps away from him, the cold light of the corridor drawing a clear line between us. Looking at his disheveled and regretful appearance, I felt a cold calm in my heart. "You're saying sorry now, it's too late, Lugia." I slightly curled the corners of my lips, but there was no emotion in that smile, only endless estrangement and mockery. "I cannot accept Captain Lu's apology, after all. You're the kind of person who would risk your life for team member Xia. What does this trivial matter now?" After Xiao was locked in the solitary confinement room, she was initially still cursing wildly, attacking me and Lugia with the most vicious language, but a few days later, perhaps realizing that throwing a tantrum was useless, she began to change her strategy. She began a hunger strike. The guards reported that she would just curl up in a corner every day, silently shedding tears, repeatedly muttering, "Let me see Chino and I just want to see him one more time, even if I die. I want to die in front of him." When the news reached Lugia, he was receiving a painful leg muscle massage to prevent the muscles from atrophying completely. Upon hearing the guard's report, he gripped the bedsheet tightly with his hand at his side, his knuckles turning white, his tightly closed eyelashes trembling violently, but in the end, he only managed to squeeze out a sentence through clenched teeth. "I won't see him." He couldn't see her. He knew it was just another of Xiao's tricks. Meeting her would only make her more entangled, and would only make him feel more embarrassed and make him see his own foolishness more clearly. However, Xiao's devoted love act had an effect on some people who were unaware of the truth or deliberately pretended to be confused. At some point, new rumors began to circulate in the shelter. "Teacher Xia is quite pitiful too. She stole the medicine for Captain Lu." Yes, although the method was wrong, it was all from the heart. Now that he's locked up, Captain Lu won't even see him. That's so heartless. I heard she's dying and just wanted to see Captain Lu one last time before she passed away. They won't even grant that, if you ask me. If it weren't for Deputy Captain Jian interfering and insisting on saving Teacher Xia first, Captain Lu wouldn't have been paralyzed, and the 2 of them might have been together long ago. Why all this trouble? These discussions, like sewage in a gutter, spread silently. Several team members who had previously received small favors from Xiao even jointly wrote a letter requesting that Xiao be given leniency, believing that her actions were excusable. When the petition with more than a dozen signatures was carefully placed in front of Lugia by his trusted team members, he was trying to move from the bed to the wheelchair using his weak arm strength. He had been practicing for many days, each time leaving him drenched in sweat and his arms trembling. After countless failures, he would fall heavily back onto the bed, eliciting a soft gasp from the nurse, but he stubbornly refused to ask for help, as if he wanted to prove through this almost self-destructive method that he was not a complete waste. He looked at the petition. The names on it were somewhat familiar, yet somewhat unfamiliar. Each name was like a red-hot needle, piercing his eyes and his already riddled heart. Excusable, a sincere heart. What about his legs? What about his future? What about his dignity as a man, as a soldier? Did he deserve to be ruined by this sincerity? And Jianyu? How dare they even mention Jianyu? Do they even know that he was the one who gave up on Jianyu back then? He was like an idiot, pushing his wife, who truly loved him and had given everything for him, to her death for such a worthless man. Ugh, a metallic taste rose in his throat, and Lugia suddenly swung his arm, sweeping the petition, along with the water glass and medicine on the bedside table, all onto the floor. He roared in despair and rage like a wild beast trapped in a cage, his eyes bulging and bloodshot, veins bulging on his forehead. and his whole body convulsing violently due to extreme emotional fluctuations. Team leader, doctor, call a doctor quickly. The ward was immediately thrown into chaos. Medical staff rushed in, restrained him from losing control, and injected him with a sedative in the last second before his consciousness went dark. Lu Jia saw the gray sky outside the window and his own face, distorted and incredibly ugly with anger and despair, reflected in the glass. On the 5th day of Xia Yao's hunger strike, her body was extremely weak. I ordered the medical officer to force-feed her intravenous nutrition to keep her alive. Why won't you let me die? She lay on the cold floor of the solitary confinement cell, her eyes unfocused, muttering to herself. I stood outside the confinement room, watching her through the iron bars. Death. My voice sounded exceptionally clear and cold in the empty solitary confinement room. That would be too easy for you, Xia Yao. She turned her head abruptly, her cloudy eyes flashing with hatred. Jian Yu, you vicious woman, you'll die a horrible death. Ignoring her curse, I slowly said, don't you want to see Lu Jia? I can give you a chance. Xia Yao's eyes lit up instantly, as if she had grasped at the last straw. However, not here, I continued. Tomorrow, the shelter will hold a general meeting to announce the decision regarding your attempted theft. Everyone will be there. What do you want to do? Xia Yao looked at me warily. I leaned down slightly, meeting her gaze through the iron bars, a cold smile curving my lips. I want you to tell everyone in person whether you stole the medicine for Lu Jia or for your own shady motives. What kind of deal did you make with those who petitioned for you? Xia Yao's face turned deathly pale instantly, her eyes filled with terror. Of course she understood what I meant. Those who helped her spread rumors and petition had more or less taken the rations that she had secretly kept, which should have belonged to Lu Jia, or trinkets that she had obtained from who knows where. Once these things are exposed. No, you can't, she trembled, her words incoherent. I can. I straightened up, my tone leaving no room for argument. Either you confess at the General Assembly, or I will exile you for life on charges of attempted theft and endangering the safety and order of the shelter. The choice is yours. After saying that, I stopped looking at her desperate and struggling expression and turned to leave. I know what she will choose, between death and total social death. Someone like her would always choose the latter. After all, as long as she's alive, she might still dream of a chance to turn her life around. The next day, the largest gathering place in the shelter was packed with people. Almost all the team members who could get away came. People whispered among themselves, discussing the matter, the atmosphere heavy yet tinged with an irrepressible excitement to watch the spectacle. I stood on the stage, my gaze calmly sweeping across the audience. Lu Jia was also wheeled in by the nurse and sat in an inconspicuous corner. He kept his head down, shrouded in an aura of despair, and dared not meet anyone's gaze. When Xia Yao, looking gaunt and being supported by two teammates, was brought onto the stage, the entire audience fell silent instantly. Countless gazes, like searchlights, focused on her. I picked up the megaphone, and my voice clearly echoed throughout the venue, regarding the attempted theft of important medical supplies by team member Xia Yao. The investigation has yielded conclusive evidence. Now, the person involved will recount the events and their motives. All eyes turned to Xia Yao. She trembled all over, her face was deathly pale, and her lips quivered. She glanced at Lu Jia in the corner of the audience, then quickly looked away. Finally, as if resigned to her fate, she closed her eyes and began to confess in a broken, tearful voice filled with utter humiliation. I stole the medicine, not because of Chino and it's because I was scared that he wouldn't get better, and then I would have no one to rely on. I also secretly swapped Chino and I's nutritional supplements and medicine for some skincare products and food, and give them to a few people so they would speak well of me. With each word she spoke, the uproar from the audience grew louder. Those who had previously signed the petition now wished they could bury their heads in the ground, their faces flushed red. Sitting in the corner, Lu Jia suddenly raised his head and stared intently at the figure on the stage. When he heard Xia Yao admit that she stole the medicine for him and even withheld his life-saving supplies to win people over, his eyes were almost popping out of their sockets. So that's how it is. What unwavering affection, what selfless dedication. It's all bullshit from beginning to end. All she thought about was herself. She treated him like a long-term meal ticket. After he became paralyzed, she didn't think about how to take care of him, but how to use his remaining value to seek personal gain, even going so far as to steal life-saving medicine. A tremendous sense of absurdity and anger at being fooled overwhelmed him like a tsunami. He felt a sharp pain in his chest, a metallic taste rising in his throat, and his vision blurring. On stage, Xia Yao's confession continued, her voice growing softer and softer, filled with despair and shame. Below the stage, Lu Jia suddenly bent over and coughed violently. Bright red blood splattered onto the back of his pale hand. A shocking sight. Team leader, the nurse cried out in alarm. The venue descended into chaos once again. 3 days after the General Assembly, I stood in front of the panoramic window of the highest command room in the shelter. Outside the window, there is eternal ice and snow. Inside, the heads of various departments stand solemnly. The old director solemnly placed the key card, representing the highest authority, in my palm. His voice was steady and powerful. Jian Yu, from today onwards, you are the commander-in-chief of the Hope Shelter. We all believe that you can lead everyone to go further. Without refusing or showing any modesty, I took the key card and turned to face the crowd. My gaze swept over familiar and unfamiliar faces, finally settling on a figure in the corner trying to hide himself. Lu Jia was pushed by his former adjutant, like a gray, defeated shadow. My first order, my voice boomed through the entire shelter, clear and cold, is to abolish all privileges and benefits of former Captain Lu Jia, effective immediately. He will be moved into the collective sanatorium as an ordinary wounded team member. A faint gasp came from the crowd. Lu Jia suddenly raised his head and looked at me in disbelief. His lips trembled, and his once proud eyes were now filled with humiliation and a desperate, groveling look. I met his gaze without wavering in the slightest. Second order, team member Xia Yao, for stealing important materials, inciting public opinion, and endangering order, is sentenced to permanent exile. Execute immediately. Once the order is given, there is no room for reversal. As Xia Yao was escorted out of the shelter's heavy doors, she let out a scream that sounded inhuman. She struggled desperately, turning back to cry out, "Brother Jia, save me. I know I was wrong. Jinyu, you'll die a horrible death. You'll all freeze to death outside." Her curse was instantly swallowed up by the howling cold wind. 2 officers, expressionless, pushed her into the vast snowfield, leaving her with only 3 days' worth of basic rations and a substandard protective mask. The extreme cold of -60°C would judge everything fairly. The door slowly closed, shutting out her final cries and also shutting out a sordid past. A team member whispered, "Commander, Lu Jia, he requests to see you one last time." I watched the man on the monitor, who was being stopped by a nurse at the entrance of the communal convalescent area, frantically rocking his wheelchair, shouting my name like a madman. Not see, 2 words, light and airy, yet like a final verdict. A year later, under my leadership, the shelter not only strengthened its defenses but also established a trade alliance with 2 other large shelters through diplomatic means. We found new geothermal energy sources, expanded the planting area, and even resumed small-scale schooling. For the first time, hope shines so truly upon this frozen land. On a rare evening when the energy supply was stable, I went to visit the children in the newly built children's activity area. They are singing cheerful nursery rhymes under the guidance of their teacher. As I turned to leave, at the corner of the corridor, I met Lu Jia, who was being pushed out by a caregiver to get some fresh air. He was so thin he was unrecognizable, with sunken eyes, huddled in a dilapidated wheelchair, covered with a patched blanket. His once handsome face was now only sickly pale and numb with a deathly aura. Upon seeing me, a faint glimmer of light suddenly appeared in his lifeless eyes, and his chapped lips moved, uttering broken, breathy words. "Jian Yu." I stood tall and straight in my spotless commander's uniform, a stark contrast to his disheveled appearance. The caregiver looked at me nervously, afraid that I would blame her. I merely glanced at him indifferently, as if looking at an unimportant old object, my gaze lingering without lingering, and walked straight past him. The gentle breeze stirred by his skirt brushed against his stiff fingers. His outstretched hand remained frozen in midair. Futile. Behind him came his suppressed sobs, like those of an old bellows, and the caregiver's soft words of comfort. 6 months later, I personally led a team and successfully wiped out a group of plunderers who had been harassing trade routes for a long time. I returned with rich spoils and prestige. Upon returning to the command room, his trusted adjutant brought him a report, speaking calmly. "Commander, a report from the sanatorium states that Lu Jia passed away early this morning. The cause of death was complications from organ failure." I was signing an energy allocation document with my head down, and my pen didn't even pause for a second. Understood, handle the aftermath according to the standards for ordinary team members. Yes, the adjutant turned and left. After I finished signing the last document, I put down my pen and walked to the window. Outside the window, the snow and ice remained, but the newly built greenhouse dome in the distance reflected the faint sunlight, and the laughter of children could be faintly heard. I raised my hand and gently brushed away the frost flowers that had formed on the window frame. The cold was still biting, but my heart is no longer frozen. Those past hatreds and resentments, those entangled loves and obsessions, have long been crushed, weathered, and dissipated in the endless winter winds by the torrent of time and the responsibilities we bear. I turned and walked toward my desk, which was piled high with documents waiting to be processed. The road ahead is long, and the ice fields have not yet melted, but I and my sanctuary will continue on. Extra, Lugia knew he was about to die. The complications of organ failure were like countless ants gnawing at his internal organs. The pain had long since numbed him, leaving only a chill that seeped from his very bones. It was even more biting than the extreme cold outside the shelter, which was minus 60 degrees Celsius. The air in the communal sanatorium is always filled with a stuffy smell of disinfectant mixed with the lingering effects of aging. He curled up on the hard hospital bed, listening to the old soldier in the next bed, who had lost a limb due to frostbite, muttering incoherently in his sleep. He often dreams. In my dreams, I always return to that night 3 years ago, when the temperature suddenly dropped to minus 60 degrees Celsius. His voice, distorted by fear and pain, came through the communicator. Jianyu, choose Xiao, she can't die. Then, the scene abruptly changed. Jianyu stood atop the icy cliff, looking at him. Her eyes, once brimming with starlight, were now filled with frozen despair. He reached out and shoved her violently off the cliff. No, he always woke up here in a cold sweat, his heart pounding wildly as if it were trying to break free from the confines of his chest. In the darkness, he gasped for breath, futilely trying to move his legs, which had long since lost all feeling. Overwhelmed by immense regret, the suffocating feeling was more unbearable than the pain itself. How could he give up Jianyu for a woman like Xiao? Jianyu, who stayed by his side when he was still a naive young man, accompanied him in training and on missions, and stubbornly refused to shed tears even when he was injured, despite her red eyes, always supported him during his every adventure. Jianyu, who, after the extreme cold descended, used her not-so-broad shoulders to hold up a sky for him, risking her life time and time again to go out and search for supplies, leaving the best for him while secretly eating frozen synthetic rations herself. How could he think that Xiao's superficial weakness and adoration were more precious than Jianyu's calm and resilient love? Cough cough, heh, with a rumbling sound like a broken bellows, he turned his head with difficulty to look out the window. It was almost dawn. A few rays of dim light peeked in through the frost-covered windows. He remembered that the windows of his and Jianyu's home used to be always sparkling clean. Jianyu said that no matter how cold it is outside, she wants her home to look bright and warm. This sanatorium is now as cold as a coffin. It's time to take your medicine. The caregiver's voice interrupted his thoughts. Carrying a perfunctory indifference, the caregiver roughly lifted him up, stuffed several different colored pills into his mouth, and then poured a mouthful of warm water down his throat. His movements were swift, but utterly devoid of warmth. Some water went into his trachea, and he coughed violently, the bitter taste of the pills spreading in his mouth. He was once the captain of a special forces team, an object of admiration for countless team members, and a towering husband in Jianyu's eyes. Now, he is just a useless, annoying cripple who needs to be waited on hand and foot. It seems a bit lively outside today. He caught his breath and asked in a hoarse voice. He seemed to hear faint cheers coming from afar. While packing up, the caregiver casually replied, "The commander has returned with his team. They won another great victory, wiped out the raiders, and brought back a lot of good stuff." Commander Jianyu, his heart felt like it was being gripped tightly by an invisible hand, the pain almost making it hard for him to breathe. He had seen her as a commander, standing high above, calm, powerful, and unquestionable. Those eyes, which once only reflected his figure, now hold the safety and future of the entire shelter. She was no longer the Jianyu who would be happy with a glance from him or saddened by a harsh word from him. He personally killed Jianyu. Is she all right? He asked this question humbly, almost using up his last bit of strength. The caregiver gave him a strange look, as if he thought he had asked a stupid question. Of course the commander is good. If it weren't for the commander, we might have starved or frozen to death long ago. After the caregiver finished speaking, she turned around and went to take care of other patients. Yes, she's fine, good, it has nothing to do with him anymore. A violent cough struck again, this time with a metallic, rusty sweetness. He felt life rapidly slipping away from this broken body. Consciousness began to fade. In a daze, he seemed to see that afternoon many years ago again, on the training field. Jian Yu had just beaten him by half a move, her eyes crinkling with laughter, and in the sunlight, sweat slid down her fair neck. Glistening, she held out her hand to him, her voice clear and crisp. Lu Jia, do you submit? What did he say? It seems he snorted, turned his head away, but couldn't help but smile. He longed to hold that hand again, tell her you were wrong, tell her you regret it, but he could no longer reach that hand. The cold darkness, like a gentle yet cruel tide, completely swallowed him up. In his final, lingering consciousness, only one thought remained, like a curse, clinging to him until his soul was annihilated. If I could do it all over again. However, there are no ifs. As the first rays of dawn fully illuminated the frost flowers on the window frame, the caregiver discovered that the former team leader in bed number 3 had already passed away. He stared out the window, his empty pupils filled with endless regret and love that could never be spoken. Extra chapter. Xiao was woken up by the cold. No, more accurately, he was awakened by the intense pain of his body's survival instincts battling against the extreme cold. Every inch of exposed skin felt like it was being pierced repeatedly by millions of red-hot needles. The inside of the mask was covered in frost, and every weak breath made my lungs ache. Inferior protective suits are no match for the deadly embrace of -60°C. The cold seeps into every pore, penetrating to the bone marrow and freezing the blood. Help me, she tried to call out, but her voice was so weak that she could barely hear it herself. Before me lay a vast expanse of white, an endless snowfield, devoid of any hope. The heavy alloy door of the shelter had completely disappeared from sight a day earlier, utterly cutting off her only chance of survival. She remembered that when she was pushed out, Jian Yu was standing behind the door, coldly watching her through the gradually closing crack. His gaze was colder than the icy plains, devoid of any emotion, as if he were looking at a piece of trash that urgently needed to be disposed of. Jian Yu, you vile woman, you poisonous slut, you'll die a horrible death. She cursed with all her might, but her teeth were chattering wildly, making a clicking sound. Why did it turn out like this? She just wanted a better life. Is that wrong? Lu Jia loves her so much that he'd give up his life for her. What's wrong with using some of his supplies, since he's not going to get better anyway? What's wrong with giving her those medicines to maintain her beauty and get her a better life? It's all Jian Yu's fault. If Jian Yu had listened to her and saved Lu Jia first, Lu Jia wouldn't have been paralyzed. She wouldn't have had to take care of a cripple, she wouldn't have had to take the risk of stealing medicine, and she wouldn't have ended up like this. Yes, it's all Jian Yu's fault. Hatred temporarily made her forget the cold, but reality soon dealt her an even heavier blow. The 3-day ration consisted of rock-hard synthetic compressed biscuits. She shakily pulled it out, wanting to take a bite, but found that the biscuit was already frozen solid. Moreover, her fingers, which were covered in heavy gloves, were not flexible at all. In a moment of carelessness, the life-saving biscuit fell into the bottomless snow pit and disappeared instantly. No, she let out a desperate wail and rushed over to dig in vain, only to find a handful of cold snow. Hunger, like another demon, began to gnaw at her stomach. On the first day, she trudged through the cold and hunger, trying to find shelter from the wind, or some other legendary refuge, but as far as the eye could see, there was nothing but snow. The next day, she began to lose feeling in her toes, and then her fingers. The mask was broken, and the hot breath I exhaled instantly froze on my eyelashes and hair, blurring my vision. She fell countless times, and each time she got up, it was even more difficult. Hallucinations began to appear. She seemed to see a warm room, Lu Jia smiling gently at her, and her teammates who adored her. Brother Jia, save me, I know I was wrong, I really know I was wrong, she cried, and her tears froze into icicles that hung on her face. No one responded to her, only the howling wind seemed to be the most merciless mockery of her. On the 3rd day, she was completely unable to walk, curled up in a shallow snow pit. Body heat was rapidly dissipating, the frostbitten areas began to turn black and ulcerate. emitting an indescribable odor. After the extreme cold passed, a strange burning sensation arose, making her want to tear off all her clothes. She knew she was going to die. Just as her consciousness was about to completely fade away, she heard footsteps. It wasn't an illusion, it was real, the crunching sound of footsteps on the snow. Hope instantly ignited her last bit of life force. She struggled to lift her head, and through her blurry vision, she saw several figures dressed in heavy furs and wearing goggles. They're other survivors. Are they the search and rescue team? Help, help me. She reached out her hand with her last bit of strength. The figures stopped and gathered around. Their gazes were devoid of pity, only a coldness, as if they were assessing the value of goods. A man squatted down, roughly ripped off her tattered mask, pinched her chin to look at her face, then examined her frostbitten and ulcerated hands and feet, before disgustedly letting go. Damn it, I thought I'd found someone useful. His face is all right, but his hands and feet are rotten and useless. There's no profit in that, the man said in a gruff voice. Another voice rang out, indifferent, looks like she was exiled from some refuge. Fine, strip her of these rags and see if there's anything usable. Hurry up, we can't stay in this godforsaken place any longer. No, please, take me away, Xia Yao pleaded in terror, realizing that these people were not her saviors at all. Nobody paid any attention to her. Those survivors were actually icefield scavengers, even more ruthless than the raiders, who specialized in scavenging the supplies left behind by the exiles, and even more sordid acts. They roughly tore off her already inadequate protective suit, ransacked every pocket, and even ripped off her cheap, dull alloy earrings, taking away the last bit of value she had and her last shred of dignity. Then, as if discarding a piece of real trash, they threw her naked back into the snow pit. Pa, what bad luck. The scavengers, grumbling and cursing, quickly disappeared into the snowstorm with the meager spoils they had plundered from her. A thorough, unmasked chill instantly enveloped her. Shame, despair, fear, all emotions vanished, leaving only the body instinctively and violently trembling. She could feel her life rapidly slipping away, her body temperature plummeting, and her consciousness sinking into boundless darkness. She didn't know how much time had passed, but before she completely lost consciousness, she felt something touching her festering ankle, soft, damp and cold. She barely opened her eyes a crack. She saw several pale, fat, maggot-like creatures emerging from the snow, wriggling and crawling onto her frozen body, beginning to gnaw at the blackened, necrotic flesh. The faint, chilling gnawing sound became the last sound she heard in this world. Her mouth was agape, her eyes wide open, reflecting the gray sky and endless snow in her pupils. The face that once captivated Lu Jie and aroused Jian Yu's jealousy was now twisted into a grotesque expression of terror and despair. It was quickly covered by falling snowflakes and would eventually be frozen solid along with this filthy body, becoming an insignificant part of this cruel ice field, nourishing the lowest and most repulsive creatures. In the spring of the 12th year of the extreme cold, the surface temperature rose to -45 degrees Celsius for the first time. The Hope Shelter has been expanded 3 times, and new cold-resistant crops cultivated in the domed greenhouses are even producing small fruits. Children recited poems from the old days in a temperature-controlled classroom, while long lines of people waited in front of the trading post to exchange goods. I stood in front of the holographic map in the command center, listening to reports from various departments on the progress of spring plowing. My adjutant, Wei Nanfeng, stood beside me, occasionally adding precise data whenever my gaze swept across a certain spot on the map. The permafrost in the northern valley is beginning to soften, and the exploration team suggests that they could try digging for groundwater next month. The new insulation materials delivered by the Trade Alliance have arrived and will be prioritized for allocation to newly built residential areas. His voice was calm and clear, like a stream after the snow has melted. When the meeting ended, he naturally picked up my thermos to fill it with hot water, and when he placed it next to me, the temperature was just right for drinking. The Alliance representative joked privately, Lieutenant Wei is no adjutant, he's clearly the commander's personal butler. He heard it but didn't argue, he just lowered his head to organize the documents, his ears turning slightly red. That evening, I unusually finished work on time. When I returned to my accommodation, I saw a bunch of pale blue ice flowers on the coffee table in the living room. These small flowers only grow in specific rock crevices and can only be picked after a 3-hour hike. Wei Nanfeng came out of the kitchen wearing an apron and carrying a stew pot. Today the harvest team got some fresh tundra meat, and I tried adding some greenhouse herbs. A warm, fragrant aroma wafted from the pot, and fine beads of sweat glistened on his forehead. This man, who once calmly sniped on the battlefield, is now serving me soup with his steady hands. I suddenly remembered that many years ago, I also cooked and cleaned for another person, only to be met with indifference and betrayal in return. What's wrong? He put down his spoon and looked at me. I shook my head, and our fingertips brushed against each other as I took the bowl. He gently took my hand. His palm had thin calluses from years of holding a gun, yet it was as warm as the sunlight in the perpetual daylight zone. An emergency report was suddenly received at night. A leak had occurred at the No. 2 energy well. When we arrived at the scene, the ruptured pipe was spewing out high-temperature steam. Just as I was about to step forward, Wei Nanfeng had already used his protective shield to block my way. "Commander, step back, 3rd Squad. Follow me." He led the way into the billowing steam, and 3 hours later, the leak was finally brought under control. When he emerged, his protective suit had large corroded holes on the arms, and his skin was covered in burns. I stood by and watched as the medical officer applied the medicine to him. He looked up at me and smiled. "It's okay, it doesn't hurt." I suddenly thought of Lu Jia. Back then, he was only slightly injured, but he wanted everyone in the shelter to know how much pain he was in. But this person in front of me, when actually injured, just smiled and said it was nothing. When spring truly arrived, we held a simple ceremony at the newly built observatory. There were no flowers or a wedding dress. I was wearing my everyday commander's uniform, and he was wearing a faded military uniform. The rings we exchanged were made from the same piece of meteorite iron, with our names engraved on the inner band. As he said "I do," cheers erupted from afar as children released energy orbs. Those orbs of light rose into the sky, like shooting stars moving in reverse, illuminating the still and melted ice and snow. Later, we often stood side by side on the observatory, watching the aurora borealis flow around the ozone layer as it was being restored. One late night, he suddenly said, "Actually, the first time I saw you was at Lu Jia's wedding." I looked at him in surprise. "You were wearing a simple white dress, helping a drunk teammate out of a difficult situation." I thought to myself, this girl has the whole galaxy in her eyes. He smiled and said, "Later, when I heard you were getting married, I applied to be transferred to the farthest exploration team. So this love has existed for so long, and I only just realized it now." I rested my head on his shoulder and smelled the faint scent of energy crystal powder on him. It turns out that there was someone who had been silently protecting me for so many years while I was blindly chasing after the wrong figures. While sorting through old things yesterday, I found the box containing Lu Jia's belongings when he passed away. Besides the dog tag, there was also an unmailed letter inside, the handwriting so shaky it was almost illegible. "Jian Yu, I regret it every day. If only I could do it all over again." I didn't finish watching it. I just found it ridiculous. The letter and box were then handed over to the processing center. As I turned around, I saw Wei Nanfeng standing at the door holding our 1-year-old daughter. His daughter waved her little hands and babbled, and he bent down to kiss her cheek before reaching out his hand to me. Unbeknownst to me, I had long forgotten the past and embraced my own life. After 25 years of extreme cold, the Earth's surface temperature finally stabilized above 0 degrees Celsius. The former Hope Shelter has developed into a thriving surface city called New Beginning. Beneath the glass dome lies a lush park where children play by the fountain, and old-fashioned songs echo through the rebuilt school. I stepped down from my command position 3 years ago and am now a distinguished professor at New Start University, where I teach extreme cold survival history and crisis management. Wei Nanfeng was in charge of designing the city's security system. His daughter, unlike him, perfectly inherited her father's composure and his own stubbornness. This spring was exceptionally warm, and I led my research team to the Northern Valley for an ecological survey. After the glaciers receded, the exposed rock layers bore witness to the harshness of that era. "Professor Jane, we've made a discovery here." The students' gasps of surprise came from the exploration site. I walked over and saw a twisted skeleton exposed beneath the melting ice. The body was exceptionally well preserved. The skeleton was curled up in an extremely painful position, naked, with obvious gnaw marks on the ends of its limbs. The empty eye sockets stared at the sky, as if screaming silently. The students looked reluctant, and some turned their heads away. I watched quietly, despite the corpse's face being twisted and deformed. I recognized her at a glance. Xiao, more than 20 years seemed to be compressed in this moment. I recalled her pitiful appearance back then. Her affected manner when she was with Lu Jia, and her hysterical curses when she was exiled. Now, only this wreckage, sealed in ice for 20 years, remains, silently telling the story of her final fate. Do we need to take notes? The student asked me in a low voice. Record it. My voice was unusually calm. It's part of history, a record of all those who chose the wrong path in the extreme cold. The exploration team carefully removed the skeleton. During the transport, a small, rusty metal piece fell out from the clenched hand bones of the skeleton. It was an identification tag issued by the shelter in its early days, with the 3 words Xiao faintly engraved on it. The student handed me his ID card. I took it. The cold metal felt slightly warm in the spring sunshine. I squeezed the identification tag, then gently placed it back next to the skeleton. Let him be buried on the spot, I told the students. There's no need for a tombstone. Several students dug a simple grave nearby. As the soil slowly covered the skeleton, I turned to look out of the valley. In the distance, the glass dome of Xinchi City glittered in the sunlight. Further away, I could almost see the direction of home. Wei Nanfeng should have already finished get off work and was helping his daughter with her homework. My favorite soup was simmering in the kitchen. Professor Jian, are you all right? The student asked with concern. I smiled slightly and shook my head. The spring breeze brushed against my hair, carrying the fragrance of grass and earth. At that moment, I suddenly realized that I no longer hated. Hatred is like ice and snow. It can freeze even the human heart into a wasteland. Love is like a spring breeze, capable of reviving all things. Xiao's ending was tragic, but it was the bitter fruit of her own choices. Lu Jia felt deep remorse, but it was already a cage he had built for himself. As for me, Jian Yu, I have already walked out of that icy and snowy place. I reached into my pocket and felt the little stone my daughter had secretly given me this morning. She said it was a lucky stone she found by the river. Let's call it a day, I said to the students. Today is my daughter's birthday, and I need to get back to make her a cake. As I turned to leave, the spring sunshine was just right, warmly shining on my back. I left that skeleton, along with all the past grievances, forever in the melting ice. Ahead lies newly reborn land, a warm home, and people who love me and are waiting for me to return. This time, I can finally walk without looking back towards the future that truly belongs to me, a future filled with spring blossoms. What are your thoughts after hearing this story? Feel free to share your feelings in the comments section. Now, let's begin a new story. At the banquet in the previous life, the family needs a marriage alliance, and my brother asked me who I wanted to choose. Without hesitation, I chose my carefree childhood friend, Gu Peiji. However, he maintained a close relationship with his first love after marriage, and the two even had a child together. When his brother teased him, he scoffed, "When Chiwu is the world's #1 simp, no matter what I do, she will never leave me." I finally gave up and turned to leave. However, a car accident occurred on the highway, resulting in the deaths of both the mother and unborn child. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the day of the party. "Chiwu, have you decided who to choose?" my brother asked softly. I stood there, trembling, still unwilling to believe that rebirth was happening to me. Before I could reply, Mrs. Gu came up to me and handed me the family heirloom bracelet. She smiled gently and said, "Wu will definitely choose our rascal. The two of them grew up together and have a very deep bond that no one else can compare to." You're already drunk before you've even had a drink. Who would want to marry Wen Chiwu? She's not good at studying, she's short, and her looks are just so. Marry her, our Gu family's genes would be tainted. Gu Peiji frowned, his eyes filled with disgust as he looked at me. Just like in her previous life, she remained as sharp-tongued as ever. In my previous life, I assumed it was just because we bickered as children, and I didn't realize it at all. Gu Peiji truly loathes me at this moment. Coming to my senses, I immediately took 2 steps back. Aunt Gu Peiji and I are just friends. As soon as he finished speaking, the people around him fell silent. Everyone knows that the Wen and Gu families have been friends for centuries. Everyone knows that I've liked Gu Peiji since I was a child. Gu's mother's face froze. She looked away from me and patted her son's shoulder forcefully. "What nonsense are you talking about? Marrying Wu is a blessing from our past life." Gu Peiji seemed taken aback by my words. His previously icy expression instantly darkened. I trembled as I tugged at my brother's suit jacket, my eyes red, and whispered, "I'm not feeling well, I want to go home, there's no rush for the marriage alliance." My brother had just raised his hand to ask someone to take me home first. The next second, Gu Peiji grabbed my hand and abruptly started walking out, coldly saying, "Brother Chiyu, I'll take Wu home." He held my hand tightly, and I couldn't let go at all. He wanted to call for help, but when he turned around, he found that his mother was already blocking his brother's way. Outside the hotel, Gu Peiji shook off my hand without hesitation. My high heels involuntarily lurched backward a step, and I instinctively reached out my hand towards him. Gu Peiji was also taken aback, and just as he was about to reach out and grab me, I reacted quickly, pulling my hand back and landing hard on my bottom. A sharp pain shot straight to my head, and my face scrunched up in pain. Gu Peiji's expression changed, and he stepped forward to help me up. Without hesitation, I said, "Don't come near me." After regaining my senses, I took off my high heels, pushed myself up with my hands, and stood up. This series of reactions made Gu Peiji's face darken completely. He sneered, "What trick are you playing now? Playing hard to get, Wen Chiwu? When did your methods become so disgusting?" I looked up, and my eyes were filled with tears. I hadn't even noticed Gu Peiji. I had so much to say, but when I met his eyes, meeting his disgusted gaze, every word felt like a thorn stuck in her throat. I chuckled to myself, and before he could say anything, I threw my high heels, worth tens of thousands, on the ground, turned around, and left barefoot without hesitation. These shoes were a gift from Gu Peiji on my coming-of-age ceremony. According to Gu's mother, he had carefully selected these shoes over a long period of time. Knowing that today's banquet is important, I specially chose these shoes, but I forgot, these shoes are too big, they don't belong to me. I also forgot that incompatible people will never be compatible. Gu Peiji did not chase after him. To him, this was just a manipulative tactic of mine, a way of playing hard to get. When I got home, I lay down in the bathtub and drifted off to sleep. My mind kept replaying everything that happened in my previous life. My hands gripped the edge of the bathtub uncontrollably. Water reached my nose, and I choked several times before I was fully awake. I got up, wrapped myself in a bathrobe, and looked at myself in the mirror. There were no burn marks on the face, nothing at all. I touched my face, lowered my head, and sobbed. In my previous life, when the Gu family caught fire, Gu Peiji rescued my beloved without hesitation, abandoning me in the process. I was left behind until I was rescued. His face was no longer intact. Afterwards, Gu Peiji explained, "I didn't see you. Annen's legs were trapped under the fire, and the fire was so intense, I had to save her first." Thinking back to this, I raised my hand and slapped myself across the face. How laughable. In my previous life, I was as stupid as a dog. Completely manipulated by Gu Peiji's few words, mostly because of rebirth. All night long, he kept repeating the things from his past life. When I woke up in the morning, I felt exhausted and unwell. Perhaps they sensed that something was wrong with me last night. My older brother, who usually arrives at the company much earlier, is waiting for me downstairs. "Come over for breakfast when you wake up." My brother looked at the dark circles under my eyes and a look of heartache crossed his face. "Did your brother disturb you when he came home last night?" I shook my head, my eyes red, and rushed into my brother's arms. She hugged her brother tightly with both hands. My brother paused for a moment, then put down the newspaper and gently patted my back. He said softly, "If liking that Gu family boy is too tiring, then don't like him anymore. Okay, you can never get married, and your brother can support you." I choked back tears and sniffled. There was actually no arranged marriage at all. It was my brother who realized I liked Gu Peiji and deliberately arranged it this way. Remembering how her brother died saving her in her previous life, my heart ached more and more, and I held on tighter and tighter. I was awakened by a slight cough, with red eyes. I turned back and looked over. A man was sitting on the sofa at some point, tears welling up in his eyes, but I couldn't see him clearly. The man smiled and said, "Good morning, little princess." I was stunned for a moment, then quickly pushed myself out of my brother's arms and recognized the person in front of me as Fu Hancheng, my brother's best friend. When his brother died, Fu Hancheng avenged him by killing the murderer. When I saw him for the last time, he said he wanted to take me away from prison, saying that my brother's death wasn't so simple. I'm bewitched. I always believe that people I've known for decades won't turn out that way. When I look back and think of him, I've already had a car accident and am in labor on the highway. In a flash, I realized the last sound I heard before I died What are you doing here? I asked in surprise. At this point in time, he's probably going to sleep because he was out partying too late last night. Fu Hansheng raised an eyebrow and chuckled softly. Ahem. The older brother coughed lightly and gestured towards breakfast with his eyes. I nodded, sat down, and ate my breakfast, occasionally glancing back at the man behind me. After eating for a while, the older brother hesitated for a moment before speaking. Chi-Wu, has Pei Ji made you angry lately? I looked at my brother, not understanding what he meant. The older brother opened his phone and found Pei Ji's latest post on WeChat Moments. It was a photo of a mountaintop shrouded in mist, accompanied by the caption, "What should I do? I've upset my little princess. How do I appease her?" I instinctively gripped the spoon tighter, my whole body trembling without me even realizing it. It was because of this post on WeChat Moments in my past life. I always thought that Gu Peiji liked me too. It wasn't until later that I learned the little princess he was talking about was his white moonlight, Nan Wu, and it was never me. The porridge, which had been delicious, now looked like a candle. I can't eat or swallow anything. I lowered my eyes and said in a trembling voice, "Brother, I don't want to mention Gu Peiji anymore. In this life, I never want to have anything to do with Gu Peiji again. My 20 years of liking him were just wishful thinking on my part." The older brother's expression froze for a moment. He didn't speak, but instead opened Gu Peiji's chat history. The chat log above shows my brother asking me about my whereabouts. The older brother glanced at it a few times, then blocked and deleted it without hesitation. He smiled gently and said, "With your brother here, you won't suffer any grievances." I looked at my brother with tears in my eyes. My brother is always like this, choosing me without hesitation. I like Gu Peiji, and he's paving the way for me. I don't like him, but he'll take care of it for me. After breakfast, my brother took me to the company. Originally, this company was intended to be handed over to me as an heir. Just because I married Gu Peiji, I always want to spend my time with Gu Peiji. The company basically never comes. This caused a lot of problems at the company, and in the end, my brother had to go back to China to resolve them. Everyone knows I like Gu Peiji. He quietly handed me a special poster of Gu Peiji. A hand snatched the poster back before I could. I looked up and saw Fu Hansheng crumple the poster into a ball and throw it into the trash can. The older brother also spoke up. From now on, nothing of Gu Peiji will be allowed in the company. I suddenly remembered that Gu Peiji was a big star. Once inside the office, the older brother instructed his assistant, "Give the order, tear down any posters of Gu Peiji that are up," and, "Brother, you don't need to do that." I interrupted it. After all, there are still business dealings with the Gu family, plus the relationship between the two families. My brother noticed my worry. He shook his head and chuckled. "I told you I wouldn't let you suffer." After saying that, he raised his hand to instruct his assistant to do so. My brother has an impromptu meeting. Only Fu Hansheng and I remained in the entire office. We didn't spend much time together. The only thing I know is that he has someone he has liked for many years, but he couldn't have the one he loved, and he heard that the other person already had someone they liked. Seeing him staring at me, I awkwardly turned my head away. A moment later, the phone in my bag rang. He took out his phone, stared at it for a few seconds, and then hung up without hesitation. Fu Hansheng raised an eyebrow and chuckled lightly. "Not going to answer, junk call," I said coldly. A short while later, my phone received a text message. "I'm sick, please bring me medicine." Then came another message with a hotel room number. I stared at my phone, frowning, completely unaware that Fu Hansheng had already gotten up. When he finally realized what was happening, Fu Hansheng raised an eyebrow and smiled. "Oh, who sent the little princess her room number?" I have always been very safety conscious. He could immediately sense Gu Peiji's approach, but at that moment I was clearly startled, and I gasped for breath. Fu Hansheng seemed surprised as well, handing me water as he did so, but couldn't help but smirk. "This room number looks familiar. Isn't it the room reserved for the young master of the Gu family?" Each scion of a wealthy family has their own private room and suite in each location. Gu Peisheng's room number is 0726. I hadn't noticed anything before. Only then did I realize that the room number was Nan Wu's birthday. My fingertips were trembling uncontrollably. Fu Hansheng, who had been teasing me, instantly realized something was wrong. He frowned and asked tentatively, "What's wrong? Did that kid from the Gu family bully you?" "Brother, I don't have any other skills, but I can still beat people up." I gently shook my head. She immediately blocked and deleted Gu Peiji's number. "It's not worth it for someone who's no longer important to you to get hurt." I looked up at Fu Hansheng. His eyes seemed to be able to flirt. His stare made me blush a little. Fu Hancheng clearly did not believe it. Gu Peiji was still waiting for his medicine at the hotel. He and Wen Chiwu were caught arguing yesterday. Someone in the group immediately joked, "Oh dear, childhood sweethearts are breaking up. Princess Wen seems very angry this time." Peiji, stop making Chiwu angry, otherwise, you'll regret it when she stops talking to you. Looking at the messages in the group, Gu Peiji gave a cold sneer. He had known Wen Chiwu since childhood, and he knew her personality perfectly well. When she brings the medicine, just buy her a little something to appease her and she'll act like a devoted follower again. I've done this thousands of times. Gu Peiji was getting tired of it. He leaned back lazily on the sofa, scrolling through videos for over half an hour, but his medicine still hadn't arrived. People in the group were still watching the drama unfold, asking if the medicine had been delivered. One sentence after another pushed Gu Peiji to his limit. He immediately exited the video browsing interface, then immediately opened the pinned post, hesitated for a moment, and made a phone call. It was just connected. It's a message indicating the call cannot be connected. Gu Peiji was stunned. He glanced at his phone, then made another call. The other party still shows that the call cannot be connected. Young Master Gu had never been blocked by anyone before, so he had no idea that this was what it meant to be blocked. He checked it on Baidu. After finding the results, he stood there stunned for a long time. Once he came to his senses, his face darkened instantly, and he slammed his newly bought phone onto the ground. The phone was instantly smashed to pieces. Wen Chiwu, you're awesome. Wen Chiwu, far away, had no idea what had happened. They didn't care what happened to Gu Peiji. My brother finished his meeting at noon. Fu Hancheng suggested, let's have hot pot. I'm craving it. I looked at Fu Hancheng. Whenever I'm in a bad mood, I always like to eat spicy hot pot. Only when you're numb from the spiciness will you not have time to think about these troublesome things. I was indeed annoyed by Gu Peiji just now, but it's much better now. My brother, unaware of what had happened, immediately instructed his assistant to arrange 3 seats. When he saw that I had no objections, we chose our usual hot pot restaurant. When I arrived at the store, I felt a sense of relief, as if I hadn't felt it in a long time. In my previous life, because of pregnancy, Gu Peiji said that hot pot can affect children's development for 9 whole months. I didn't eat anything spicy. Go to hell, Gu Peiji, screw your dad. He's affecting the kids. As soon as I sat down, I ordered everything and asked the manager. I want it all spicy, extra spicy, and extremely spicy. This is the first time I've ever been so irritable. Even the store manager was somewhat surprised. Suddenly, I remembered that my brother had said Fu Hancheng didn't eat spicy food, so I quickly added, a hot pot with 2 broths, please. Some were assigned private rooms. I am not worried at all that my image as a refined young lady will be affected. Once everything was served, they fed her while she ate non-stop. The older brother looked at Fu Hancheng with a curious gaze. Fu Hancheng waved his hand. Just as we were eating, a lot of noise came from outside the door. I've always preferred quiet, and the sound of noise instantly made my face scrunch up. Seeing this, Fu Hancheng gestured to the store manager. We've booked the whole store today. Those who haven't finished can continue eating. Let's not arrange for anyone else to come. It's getting a bit noisy. As he spoke, he pulled out a black card. The store manager hesitated slightly before taking it, saying, Young Master Fu, it's the young master of the Pei family. It's not easy to offend either of them. The store manager dared not make any decisions. I stopped eating my hot pot, and before we could react, a voice spoke faster than we could react. Brother Chiyu, you don't mind if I bring people along, do you? Gu Peiji entered first. Before anyone could object, he waved from behind. Nan Wu, dressed in a cheongsam, appeared from behind him and said with a charming smile, Excuse me, everyone. Gu Peiji sat down first, facing the stares of Fu Hancheng and his brother. He smiled and explained, I suddenly felt like having hot pot. This is my assistant, Nan Wu. We were high school classmates and have known each other for many years. It's a good opportunity for everyone to get to know each other. I refuse. I looked coldly at Gu Peiji. This kind of abrupt act of dining together is something he would never do. I don't understand it, and I don't want to know why. Just then, Nan Wu was about to sit down when she heard me refuse. She immediately stood up, looking aggrieved, with teary eyes as she looked at Gu Peiji. Gu Peiji, who had been smiling, instantly lost his smile, as if he had completely forgotten about my brother. He warned coldly, Wen Chiwu, if you continue to cause trouble like this, I will ignore you from now on. The surroundings fell silent instantly. Even the store manager, who had been secretly Wiping away sweat, stopped. My brother's face darkened instantly. He was about to open his mouth when I pulled him down. I looked at Gu Peiji coldly. Don't pay any attention to me, Gu Peiji. From today onwards, no, from yesterday onwards, we are strangers. Whether you live or die has nothing to do with me. I never want to like Gu Peiji again. I never want to know Gu Peiji again. This is what I kept telling myself in my dream yesterday. Gu Peiji's expression stiffened, as if he hadn't expected me to say such a thing. He then turned and saw Fu Hancheng sitting next to me. He had never met Fu Hancheng, adding to the fact that Fu Hancheng was younger. He immediately mocked him. Heh, so that's why you distanced yourself from me so quickly. You already have someone else, Wen Chiwu. You really have no shame. You said you liked me yesterday, and today you're meeting up with someone else. That's true, such a pretty boy does have some good looks. He spoke fluently and at a rapid pace. Everyone felt the chill in the air, including Nan Wu. Nan Wu desperately reached out and secretly pulled at him, but it was no use. Fu Hancheng sneered, raising an eyebrow as he leaned back, looking at him with an arrogant expression. Hearing his words, she showed no anger whatsoever. She merely raised an eyebrow and pointed at Nan Wu. Gu Peiji didn't understand what it meant until the reporters at the door swarmed in. Fu Hancheng clapped his hands lazily, raised an eyebrow and smiled. If Wu really likes me, it's my honor. But as a celebrity getting involved with his assistant, I wonder if that's sensational enough. He looked up and raised an eyebrow at the reporter. They were so flirtatious that the reporters almost forgot what they came there for. This explosive news immediately brought Gu Peiji and Nan Wu together. Before I could react, I was immediately pulled up by a hand and sneaked out the back door. I didn't expect Fu Hancheng to speak up for me. Thinking about what he just said, my heart skipped a beat. But I quickly regained my composure. Brother Hancheng, thank you. I turned my head to look for my brother. The usually calm older brother was now frantically talking to his assistant. Send me a meeting with someone from the Gu family. I want to see what kind of person this son of the Gu family really is. Also, find out exactly what the relationship is between Gu Peiji and Nan Wu. He did it all in one go. But his brother was still very angry. I tugged at my brother's hand. Originally, I thought that severing ties with the Gu family and never contacting them again would be fine, but what I know is, my brother wouldn't let me suffer. Gu Peiji must have upset him by saying those things just now. Brother, Gu Peiji's words won't affect me anymore. I just want you. I paused, looked at Fu Hancheng, and continued, I just want you all to be healthy and safe. The next day, on my way to my brother's company, I was kidnapped in the abandoned factory. My hands were tightly bound with rope. I opened my eyes and looked at this familiar place. Memories flooded my mind in an instant. I was stunned for a long time. It was years before I was kidnapped, and I never expected it to happen so soon. Knowing that they would be kidnapped, and given that the older brother always had high standards, the reason for going to his company this time was to ask him to help find some bodyguards. The kidnappers, their faces covered, immediately demanded I call for a ransom of 10 million after seeing I was awake. What are you looking at? If you don't pay a ransom of 10 million, I'll kill you. The kidnapper glared at me fiercely, his eyes revealing a look that was unlike that of an ordinary kidnapper. They loathe and hate me even more. I nodded, my voice trembling. Okay, I have money, don't worry, I have money. Untie me. My brother will only give me money if he sees I'm alright. He won't give me any money if you don't untie me. The kidnappers didn't expect me to agree so readily. They warned me as they untied me. I'm warning you, if you cause any trouble, I'll take your life. I stared silently at the kidnappers, because he had been tied up for a long time. He was so weak when he was finally untied that he sat down on the ground. The kidnapper was pointing a gun at me and urging me on. Don't be lazy, make the call now. I took the phone and called myself. The phone had no signal. Every step I took, the kidnappers followed behind. When we reached the edge of the second floor of the abandoned factory, still haven't gotten through on the phone. You're not going to call someone else, are you? The kidnapper sensed something was wrong. He reached out to snatch the phone without hesitation. I threw my phone off the second floor. The kidnapper paused for a moment, then, realizing what was happening, kicked me hard in the stomach. I was kicked to the ground, and my face was scraped and bleeding. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. The kidnappers tied me up again and immediately went down to pick up my phone. The second floor is not high normally. Mobile phones don't break that easily, but I used force, and since the area is all rocks, the phone shattered beyond recognition after hitting it. It can't be turned on at all. Seeing that his phone was useless, the kidnapper immediately cursed several times and punched me in the face repeatedly. I kept smiling the whole time, even though he was too weak to speak, but his eyes seemed to be telling him, I will never let you hurt my family again. In my previous life, it was because of this kidnapping. No one answered when I called Gu Peiji. The kidnappers found the brother's phone number, but the kidnappers didn't want any ransom at all. My brother did this to save me. He died by his gun, without a mobile phone. It's equivalent to losing all means of contacting the outside world. The kidnappers covered my head with a hood, gagged me, and poured gasoline all around me. Upon seeing the safety lock around my neck, he immediately ripped it off, and said with a sinister smile, you'd better pray that your brother comes to save you, otherwise it won't just be a matter of death for you. He looked me up and down, a wicked glint in his eyes. I didn't pay attention to what he said. No matter what, as long as my brother is safe, that's all that matters. The news of my kidnapping was posted online, but I never expected that Gu Peiji would be the first person to find me. He found me first. Seeing my injuries, he kicked the kidnapper hard. The kidnapper was kicked so hard he fell to his knees. Who gave you permission to touch her? Gu Peiji's face was dark, a look I had never seen before. I looked at him in surprise. What surprised me even more was that Gu Peiji knew the kidnappers. An unbelievable idea seemed to pop into my head. I stared at him in shock. Perhaps I really am too selfish. I just wish that in my past life, Gu Peiji hadn't answered my call. I don't want him to know the kidnappers. His brother's death was also related to him. The ropes were loosened, and I was held in Gu Peiji's arms. I didn't have the strength to break free, but a hint of despair appeared in my eyes as I looked at him. Gu Peiji, do you know him? The only people present were myself and the kidnapper. Gu Peiji's worried expression instantly froze. He clenched his fists, and his eyes held a heartache I had never seen before. He checked me for any other injuries. He did not answer my question. I grabbed Gu Peiji's collar, trembling, and questioned him over and over again. You know him, you know the kidnapper. Tell me, Gu Peiji, tell me. The voice trembled and grew louder with each passing moment. Gu Peiji simply held me tightly, keeping me firmly in his arms. Woo-woo, I'll explain when we get back. I'll explain to you. He held on very tightly. Woo-woo was very thin and small, and her breathing was unsteady at this moment, as if she might disappear at any moment. What a show! Nan Wu appeared, accompanied by several people. The kidnappers immediately followed Nan Wu. I looked in the direction the kidnapper was looking. The kidnapper looked the same as in his previous life. He was very excited when he saw Nan Wu and immediately hugged her and kissed her. Don't worry, I will avenge you. As soon as he finished speaking, the kidnapper fired a shot in my direction. Before I could react, Gu Peiji shielded me with his body. He was shot hard in the left shoulder, and he instantly broke out in a cold sweat from the pain. Nan Wu showed a hint of heartache and immediately rebuked the kidnappers. If anything happens to him, I will not forgive you. She felt a pang of heartache and wanted to get closer. Before she could even get close, Gu Peiji reached out and defensively blocked her way. Don't go near Wu-Wu, he said weakly. A simple sentence instantly enraged Nan Wu, who was initially worried. Gu Peiji, you like her? But what about me? She looked at Gu Peiji, her voice trembling. For 7 whole years, he still only loved this childhood sweetheart. She really didn't know what was so good about this green plum. Nan Wu looked at me. I was held in an embrace, only my dark eyes visible as I looked back. Nan Wu wanted to find someone to separate us. Gu Peiji held me tightly. The slightest movement caused blood to gush from his left shoulder. She knelt down and watched her lover, even as he became increasingly confused, still clinging to Qingmei, which nearly drove her mad. I don't understand Gu Peiji's actions, and what Nan Wu said. Do you like me? I just find it ridiculous. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have abandoned me in a fit of rage. You wouldn't have gotten drunk and slept with someone else while I was being kidnapped. And you wouldn't have refused to answer my calls when I was in a car accident. As if sensing my gaze, Gu Peiji trembled as he brushed the stray hairs from my forehead. Don't worry, the rescue will arrive soon. No sooner had he finished speaking than sirens and ambulance sirens blared from the doorway. Neither the kidnappers nor the people who brought Nan Wu here had expected this. Gu Peiji knew where I lived because he guessed the kidnapping was related to her, so he secretly looked at her phone. So I called the police on the way here. The kidnappers were the first to react, throwing away the lit lighter and letting the fire spread. Nan Wu screamed in shock. What are you doing? Peiji is still inside. You have to get him out. She rushed forward to help, but was struck hard on the back of the head and knocked unconscious. Before leaving, the kidnapper couldn't resist a taunt. then let you two star-crossed lovers die here, ha 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 ha. The fire grew larger and larger, and I was choked by the smoke and couldn't speak. Once I had regained some strength, I forcefully pulled Gu-Peiji up. The fire blocked their path. I patted Gu-Peiji on the shoulder. He completely fainted and couldn't be roused at all. I anxiously looked elsewhere. Finally, they turned their hopes to the spot on the edge where they had lost their phone. The second floor is not high. As long as you jump well, there won't be any problems. I weakly dragged his body, wanting to kick him off, but my wet hands reminded me. Looking at the red blood on my hands, I could only resign myself to closing my eyes. She pulled him in front of her, and sat on the cushion behind him. Gu-Peiji, you took a bullet for me. Now I don't owe you anything. Without hesitation, I fell backward. As I fell, I heard someone desperately calling my name, just like in the previous life. In this life, I finally saw their faces clearly. I saw Fu Hanqing running anxiously towards me. I regained consciousness again in the hospital. I groggily opened my eyes and reached out to pat Fu Hanqing's head. Seeing that I was conscious, he quickly went to call the doctor. The doctor gave me a full-body checkup. Aside from the abrasions, there are no other problems. When my brother learned that I was conscious, he immediately dropped everything and came over. Seeing that I was all right, he hugged me with red eyes. Silly child, no matter what happens, you must tell your brother. The kidnappers and Nan Wu were found while they were secretly leaving the country. According to the kidnappers, initially, when Chi Wu was asked to call and demand the ransom, but the other party refused to listen and even broke her phone. In a fit of anger, he kicked a few times. This made my brother extremely angry. Ignoring warnings, he punched the kidnapper several times. The kidnapper was Nan Wu's crazed ex-boyfriend. Even knowing that Nan Wu and Gu-Peiji had that kind of relationship, she still loved him. Learning that my loved one has become like this because of me, he went all the way and kidnapped me. I was stunned for a moment, then hugged my brother. It's good that my brother is all right in this life. I hugged my brother, and looking up at Fu Hanqing's tired eyes as he relaxed, I saw his expression. I silently thanked him. His hand was injured, so he probably beat the kidnapper just as badly as his brother. On the third day after I regained consciousness, Aunt Gu secretly approached my kidnapper, and she immediately knelt on the ground. Aunt Gu, please don't do this. Seeing her reminded me of Gu-Peiji. She cried bitterly, pleading, Wu, you and Peiji have always been close since we were little. He was seriously injured and hasn't woken up yet. The doctor said that if he doesn't wake up soon, he'll really become a vegetable. I know you just woke up recently, and I wouldn't want to trouble you like this if the situation weren't so critical. I was surprised for a few seconds, then followed Aunt Gu to the ward. Gu-Peiji's wounds have been treated, but he remained unconscious. I stared blankly at Gu-Peiji. I used to think I understood him very well, but I feel like I never truly understood him regarding everything that happened in my past life. At this moment, I realize again, I had no idea what kind of person Gu-Peiji was. I don't know about my past life or this life. I stared at Gu-Peiji for a long time. Even after a long time, no one noticed them standing at the door. A gust of wind blew in through the window, and I instinctively reached out to close it. Just as I stood up, a warm hand grabbed my hand. I turned around in surprise. When their eyes met, Gu-Peiji's cold gaze. Fu Hanqing, who was outside the door, reacted first, followed by Aunt Gu, who was about to come in. When she saw that her son had woken up, she immediately went to call for help. Throughout the doctor's examination, Gu-Peiji's gaze was fixed on me. After making sure he was all right, I turned and left the room. Fu Hanqing had been waiting for me for a long time. He raised an eyebrow and chuckled, not watching anymore. I shook my head. I've seen enough in my past life. Although Gu-Peiji has encountered such an incident, but the fault still lies with him. Old Master Gu has always been strict. They also care about their reputation and the relationships built on family connections. Originally, Gu's mother wanted to put in a good word for Gu-Peiji. Unexpectedly, one explosive message after another came in about his falling out with Nan Wu. Aunt Gu was so angry that she almost had a heart attack. Gu-Peiji and Nan Wu have been together for many years, but it could also be described as a sexual relationship. Gu-Peiji knew perfectly well that his wife could never be someone like Nan Wu. His reputation is completely ruined. The industry was shut down. Nan Wu and the kidnappers were both imprisoned. Originally, there was no plan to have any further contact with the Gu family, but Grandpa Gu was seriously ill, and he had always doted on me since I was little. At Aunt Gu's repeated requests, I went to the Gu family home to visit my grandfather. Grandpa said many words of apology on behalf of his grandson. I just shook my head every time. I quietly left the room after Grandpa fell asleep. He just turned his head and bumped into Gupeji. He was already there waiting. He looked like he had lost more than 10 pounds, and he looked like he would fall over if the wind blew him down. I froze for a second, then walked forward without caring. He took my hand. I stopped and looked at him. There are actually many questions I want to ask, but seeing that my brother is all right, and that I am all right too, suddenly I realized that those words weren't that important after all. He only held my hand for 2 seconds before letting go. On the way home, a warm breeze brushed against my face. My hand reached out of the car window, a safety lock resting in my palm. Perhaps it's because of the strong wind, the safety lock is off, just like me and Gupeji. All emotions were scattered by the wind. According to Gupeji, during the days he was in a coma, he had a terrible dream. He dreamed that he married Wu-Wu, but he treated Wu-Wu very, very badly. I also dreamed of a fire. He didn't actually see Wu-Wu, but he also blamed himself for being so focused on other people at the time. This ruined the beautiful Wu-Wu's appearance. He also dreamed of being kidnapped that day. Because of work, he drank a lot of alcohol. When he sobered up, Wu-Wu hugged herself, her eyes red from crying. She said, trembling, I don't have a brother anymore. I also dreamt that he, with his pride and arrogance, said those disgusting things to his friends. When they received news of Wu-Wu's car accident, Wu-Wu and the child are gone. When Gupeji woke up, he slapped himself hard. This dream kept recurring, as if it were actually happening. So when he saw the fog, he was eager to confirm something. But when I grabbed her hand and looked into her cold eyes, he dared not ask, fearing the truth would be just like his dream. In that case, he would hate himself. Gupeji has a secret. He liked Chi-Wu very much, and seeing her jealous because of him made him really happy. He always wanted to marry Wu-Wu. His relationship with Nan Wu was an accident. He didn't know what was wrong with him. He regretted it very much. Everyone in the industry says that Nan Wu is his white moonlight, but nobody knew Chi-Wu was the only white moonlight in his heart. All he knew was that he has completely lost when Chi-Wu. My brother was worried that I would be upset because of Gupeji, so he gave me several million to go out and have fun. At the airport, I saw Fu Hancheng. He raised an eyebrow at me and chuckled softly. She placed the ticket in front of me and chuckled. What a coincidence, we're on the same flight. Would it be convenient for us to travel together, beautiful lady? I smiled and nodded. The journey was long, and while he was dozing off, Fu Hancheng asked the flight attendant for a blanket. The moment they covered me up, he whispered something in my ear. Idiot, you are my true love. He didn't notice at all. I quietly opened my eyes. They didn't notice either. I've known his secret for a long time. What are your thoughts after hearing this story? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. We look forward to hearing from you.